Hello.
Live.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is Thursday night, Generational Change. I am Jen.
I'm Peter, and this is what will be, for the foreseeable future, a test, I guess you would call it.
Then it's not. Then it's more than a test. We're dipping our foot in.
We're going live at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Thursdays from now on, to get a pretty good idea of exactly how our numbers are going to be reflective in going live at 9 p.m. on Mondays, and which one tends to get better.
It's still apples and oranges, different days of the week. Like as somebody who studied like polls and surveys, like you could kind of see that it's not exactly, even, but we'll see.
No, it's not even, but we'll make it work, I think, is the most important thing. And obviously, we've got a lot of things to talk about tonight. I was able to get a little piggyback for our channel this evening from our good friend Jordan Chariton.
I saw you on there with Jordan. How was that?
It was good. Yeah, we have and what was good is that some of the topics that we talked about were not ones that were necessarily going to cross over into our territory.
Good, because we don't need to be redundant.
No, we definitely don't need.
But I was watching for a little bit, and then I saw that you called, and then I missed it because I was getting, I was preening.
Oh, you were preening.
I was preening.
Well, as I said before, it's much easier to be a guy than it is to be a gal. So the ladies have to go through a lot of things.
To be preening.
Yes. Well, you got to get.
Although you're actually more high maintenance than me. Let's be real. Like
that's not true.
Yes, it is. And you take longer to get ready than I do.
Yeah. I don't know.
I
didn't say that I don't. I didn't say that I don't take care of myself.
That's not what we're talking about. You are more high maintenance, and yeah.
Well, we all have our opinions. Some are more valued than others, I suppose.
Do you recall the last time we were in the car together and I had my face roller?
Yes.
No, I don't think so. Oh, that was you.
Yes. Yes, Donald, she's got me, and I like to. What can I say? I want to maintain my youthful beauty for as long as I possibly can.
And I have 12 years on you.
That's true. No, you're doing okay.
I'm doing okay, but it requires preening. Hence preening.
And a little bit of weed here and there too. I think.
Copious amounts of weed.
Well, you have to relax, and since status quo,
I have to live. I have to coexist in the matrix after taking the red pill. That's how we live. It's like we've taken the red pill, but we're forced to be inside the matrix.
Yes,
that's what I feel like.
And big shout out to the Status Quo audience, because we are actually officially, we're not growing at the rate that Status Quo is growing now, nor should we be. Nor should we be able. We don't provide.
I like to think that we're a nice side dish.
We'll take that. Wait, are we the appetizer? Well, hold on. I was going to say, are we an appetizer? Are we a side dish, or are we dessert? You have to.
Well, if we're coming on after the fact, I'd have to say we're a dessert or a nightcap.
Okay, so what?
But yeah,
since I don't eat dessert like ever, I guess
he really doesn't. He's the most. I have to be seriously. Peter is the most unfun person to eat with.
That's not true at all. I just don't.
It's so true. It's so true. First of all, it's like we are the inverse of when Harry met Sally, like with him ordering. But that aside, he won't eat junk. He won't eat.
No, I won't eat junk.
Exactly. How is that fun? How is that fun?
Well, pizza's junk. Yeah.
Barely. And yeah, that's not, no.
Yeah, no. Well, you have yours.
I'm just saying.
Yeah. So how are you doing as the apocalypse continues to unfold?
I'm smoking copious amounts of weed is what I'm doing, and planning my escape to higher ground.
Well, I don't know if that's going to help you because it looks like now Asheville is in the eye of the hurricane. No pun intended.
Well, I know. And I've been looking not in North Carolina anyway more recently. Just first of all, my last 2 summers that I spent there was just so overcrowded. Too many people from here are going to Western North Carolina. So it's gotten very expensive. It's gotten full of traffic.
Maybe you should go home to Colorado.
No, that's too far. I'm not going that far from my boys. However, I have come up with an area that's in a really good spot for me, that's very off the beaten path, good weather, not too far from things that might work for me. And I'm not going to say anything because I don't want to jinx my situation. And I certainly don't want to make other people know where this is because I don't want traffic.
No, you don't want to do that. And that's kind of the way it is. I say a lot of times, when you think about the most prestigious places in the country in terms of nature and, what we like to look at, it's typically in areas where there's not a lot of people.
And therein is where I want to be. And the beauty of the technology and now is that I can be anywhere. And I love that. It's so nice. So, yeah.
I think a lot of us have been directly affected by this.
My father-in-law, they've all evacuated. My family's evacuated because they're in Calabasas, and so that's pretty
Calabasas is literally right next to
right on the edge. Yeah, so they evacuated, and so they're like our people are safe, but the property is a whole other story. Who knows?
But Jen, did you see that? Did you see that James Woods, who is a huge proponent of the Gaza genocide, he lost his home in the Pacific Palisades?
No, that's unfortunate. But I did see that Steve Guttenberg was out running in the streets, helping people and helping clear stuff, and nobody even necessarily knew who he was. So I have seen that. He was adorable as usual. I'm just saying.
See, now that's a Jew to bring home to mom and dad.
He's very menschy.
He is.
He's a menschy guy. So just the whole way he was out in the street, just like helping coordinate with his neighbors and stuff. Like it was just really cute.
And for a guy in his 60s, he still looks really good.
He looks great.
Yeah, he's got that great smile. He always had that barrel chest. He
looks really good, actually.
Yeah. And that's why when he came up, he was like, hey, can I help? And they're like, aren't you Steve Guttenberg? Like,
the person I saw talking to him didn't even know who it was. Yeah. And was just thinking it was just a neighbor. And he's like, oh, and what's your name, sir? Like just how, when Steve Jordan's Guttenberg. Life, he always asks people their names. Like this is how this guy asked him his name. And he's like, Steve Guttenberg. And he was so nonchalant. I don't know. It was just really cute. But yeah.
Now, I have an old friend of mine. She used to date him. This was a number of years ago. Said he was a great guy. He's one of the
I'll raise your James Woods one, Steve Guttenberg.
Oh, yes. Well,
that's my thought.
There is an innuendo tie in there, but unfortunately Woods is he is a prick. He's a great actor. I would not take that away from him. But he's very much about himself. He's also kind of a creep if you think about it,
and yet you realize none of this is going to make me think like cool that his house was burned.
No, I don't wish I don't wish that type of shit on anybody. But it is the universal karmic alignment, essentially saying, "Oh, it's okay to wish death and destruction on the Palestinian people, but the second you get personally affected by something happening as a result of climate change and political and governmental negligence all wrapped into one, well, now all of a sudden you understand what it's like to be humbled, and humbled in the worst kind of way. And remember, there is a lack of insurance coverage for a lot of these properties that are up in the hills. So there's also that to keep in mind.
Well, yeah, because just like here, I mean, most people can't afford insurance. It's just out of control. But there's a lot of variables as to the fire situation. But the big picture, the climate crisis, the fact that corporatization and capital are like literally preying on people, this concept, it really is connected. So this not in, a direct way with what's going on in Gaza, but it's the same concept. We're all being like suffocated by empire and capital and greed. And at the end of the day, that is what caused not necessarily all the fires, because fires to some extent are a natural occurrence.
Of
They
course.
are, and they're necessary. And the problem is how far we've encroached into wild areas. So where you have I was watching some expert talk about this today, and there's a name for the line where nature meets up with civilization. So like if you're to look at a map and you see like basically where there ceases to be concrete and then where it starts, and there's a name for that line. And where our line has gotten obviously increasingly more encroaching and sucking up more resources and draining natural like it's a mess. And it really does come down to greed. It does. I guess, and you could throw negligence in there, but I think if people weren't so friggin' greedy and then complacent, maybe, the negligent people wouldn't be able to get away with it. I don't know.
No, I definitely agree. But therein lies the problem. And it is easy to point the finger at Mayor Bass, and she does deserve, responsibility.
Honestly.
And on top of everything else, she is going to get the Ted Cruz treatment. The fact that she was in Africa, in Ghana, when this happened.
That isn't look, you can be in other places and you can't always predict when things are going to happen. None of that is necessarily the issue, nor is my issue with what she's being accused of and all that, because that to me at this point is just hearsay. I don't know enough about it. However, what I saw was her being questioned and just staring into space and not even talking, not having a response, not saying.
She's totally in over her head.
And so that to me is what is the problematic part of it, more so than like we could dissect the post games. Like we could go into post game and start dissecting what went wrong. And then I'm sure she has a lot of accountability. But that aside, just how I've seen her responding to being questioned about what's going on and her being out of town is just so she is completely out of her league.
Well, that's most politicians in general. But remember, you've said oftentimes, this is the biggest reason why governors end up as president, because she's a congresswoman who is now in the chief executive position at the highest level, at the local level, which is mayor. So if you are the chief executive of your local area, in this case, it's not just some rinky-dink town, it's the second largest city in the country.
I know.
You're talking about a level of responsibility that sometimes you do not understand, that being the mayor of Los Angeles, much like being the mayor of New York City, that's why I said, when it comes to AOC, it's like, that's the highest point within the local area.
But again, and herein lies the problem.
You look at this now, and that's just a prime example of that. But
I just can't, like, this is really egregious in how her response is. But when you look, I don't know what her background is before she was mayor. I don't know, like,
she was a congresswoman for many years.
Okay, case in point. Then what I always say, which is people that are in legislative positions don't necessarily translate over to chief executive positions. Those are very different jobs. I do not like the people think, oh, you're a representative, you should run for mayor. Okay, so you have no idea how things work, because being a legislator and being a chief executive are completely different jobs.
Well, let's have some fun, because we're not going to do this evening by ourselves. We always like to have a guest, and
somebody needs to entertain me besides you.
Well, I didn't think I could do it all on my own, but we have ourselves quite a big Twitch streamer joining us this evening. And I think it's always important to get a perspective from the real progressive side of politics, where it's all about economic populism and how we're going to get a living wage and universal health care, the things that really matter.
Wait, before you do that, quickly just catch up, Sajad, because we just talked about this. Go back, Sajad, go back. We just talked about it.
Did you see the karma post about washed up actor James Woods? Yes, we already addressed Mr. Woods. He unfortunately is he's gonna have to cry into his $30 or $40 million worth of money that he still has, even though we just lost probably a $10 to $15 million home in the hills of Southern California. Boo fucking who. With that said, we are pleased to welcome Mike from PA. Welcome to Generational Change.
Hey everybody.
Hi, Mike.
It's nice to finally talk to you guys. How are you doing?
I am good. I don't know Twitch. Like, I'm so like
big mistake.
I understand. We tried that. Like, we were streaming to there for a while, but I don't think we ever had like An audience. I don't know what happened with that, but also understand I don't handle any of the social media Peter does, so I don't even understand how any of this works. But I like your symbolism, so I have a feeling you and I will get along just marvelously.
Well, you know, oh boy, sorry about that. We have our various alerts going on as we're all gonna die due to climate change.
Are you in California?
Yeah, I'm in LA right now, so
oh wow,
you can hear this.
Oh my
It's
god,
state of emergency rings. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
yeah.
So sorry
where
about that.
where
I
are
have no
you?
control over that.
Where are you in the area?
Oh, I'm far from any current fires, but you never know, right? You know,
Yes.
with the way things are. Yeah, so over on twitch.tv, I have a channel called Central Committee. Very bad with branding myself. If you don't know who I am, I was a former producer with the Majority Report. I also ran for office back in 2014.
Huh.
And I was a political consultant. I worked in the Committee of Urban Affairs, so I've got a lot of fingers in the internet space. And then I was in a politician myself, and I was a staffer, and so I have and I went to law school as well. So there's not a lot of people with my kind of experience who's also started to make content, and I started to make this little side project, the Central Committee, back in August of 2019. And when the COVID hit, it just kind of blew up for me. And I'm very big on Twitch, which is a little bit siloed away from the other places. The person who bridges that gap is Hassan, with YouTube. And I've been trying to encourage more and more lefties to come on Twitch because it is the most left-wing, online platform, in my opinion, as far as political content. Most of the big creators are actually more left-leaning, and so it's been an exciting project. And I consider myself to be someone who takes the electoral quest of the left seriously, but also keeps a hard edge of focus on this economic populism and the fact that the Democratic Party is thoroughly, as you all know, very, very, very corrupt and very, very anti-left wing. Like, that is the primary organizing principle of the Democratic Party that we have today, is organizing against the left, even much more so than even defeating Republicans.
Absolutely.
And so, waking people up to that and realizing that we have to adopt a more confrontational approach, a more anti-establishment approach, kind of harken back to Bernie Sanders 2016, not Bernie Sanders 2020.
Agreed.
And I think what happened, if we want to get us into a starting topic, I want to propose an idea for you guys, which is,
Sure.
If you examine 2016 Bernie versus 2020 Bernie, I feel like what went wrong in 2020 is Bernie Sanders kind of adopted all the bad faith critiques that were made by a kind of professional managerial class, DC nonprofit, Elizabeth Warren-esque, elite that you only really experience in coastal cities. And they went after him. They said that he's an old white man, and, he was racist because he was critical of something like an H-1B visa abuse, here being anti-immigrant. The fact that when he was in Vermont, which tended to be more permissive with guns as a more rural state, he adopted the views of his constituents, and Hillary Clinton said, this guy's bad on gun control.
Right. He had a D. He had like a D with the NRA.
Yeah, he had a D. He only had a D with the NRA. Exactly.
Yeah.
And those are the things that actually made him attractive to voters in places like West Virginia. That,
Yes.
The fact that he had credibility with, unions were his biggest donors. If you went and looked at Bernie Sanders prior to, running before he became truly grassroots, his biggest supporters were organized labor. Yeah. And he was and that was the campaign that really went from, and I just looked at this today, in January of 2015, Bernie Sanders had 0.5% in the polls.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
And he went from 0.5% of the polls all the way to, the very last primary in California. And that was from his credibility with working class people, with young people, putting together a coalition of people that actually did threaten the status quo. And the only reason Hillary Clinton was able to pull it out was because she had unified establishment control and the superdelegates. And there was a lot of shenanigans that went on in places like Iowa and she was able to just barely get over the finish line. And
Well, you never heard of flipping a coin 6 times in a row and it landing exactly as you needed to all 6 times?
Let's just say that's very unlikely.
Yeah.
And what we ended up finding, like, this is actually a really important point. And if I'm monologuing, please stop me because I'm
I'm amazed because I didn't realize anybody other than Peter has like written a dissertation on this exact specific topic. So I'm just fascinated.
Well, as somebody who is, I have all these side stories I could talk about, with my own background in Democratic Party politics, but.
Look, I mean, we've had John Nichols on our podcast, and I pointed out many times to him. I said the moment you knew that this was real was when he went and did that rally at the University of Wisconsin, and there were 10,000 people that showed up. And this was at the very end of the spring semester in 2015.
Yep.
And I said at the time, I said something's happening here. This is a real movement, and I agree with you 1,000% about what happened in 2020. All he had to do was channel exactly what he always does, and that is to say, you know why you have to support me this time instead of Donald Trump? Because Donald Trump said he was going to help the working class, and what does he do instead?
He didn't.
It's the biggest tax cut in the history of our country to the top 1%. That's all he had to do. He had to run on that one issue, and that could have ignited the labor movement all over again.
There's a lot of different factors that are conflicting and pressuring and blocking us, but is a really important point to think about when you think about like 2020, right? Like what were the tripwires that were put out in front of the left-wing movement? And I felt like there was a certain way of talking. It's very funny that you see liberals today, they're like, we need to get rid of those damn wokes, they're the ones who killed us. But when you go back to 2020 or you go back to 2019 or 2015, what was the primary way that they were trying to sabotage Bernie Sanders? It was all identitarian. It was all like he's racist because, this, or black people don't like you and you should be quiet.
Called him sexist. Liz Warren called him sexist.
Oh, that's right. Elizabeth Warren said in a private conversation that no one can verify, Bernie Sanders told me he didn't think a woman could win, And by the way, I hate to belabor the point, and this is going to this is how I am, which is a little bit meaner. And I think my biggest criticism of Bernie Sanders, and same thing with Jeremy Corbyn. I don't know how closely you guys followed British politics.
We did follow that. We followed.
The problem with Bernie Sanders and Jeremy Corbyn is that they are I'm Pennsylvanian, so that's the source of Mr. Rogers. Mr. Rogers is a Pittsburgh creation, right?
Now
and I love Mr. Rogers.
You're talking my language, okay?
But they were way too nice. Bernie Sanders, for example, with Joe Biden said, "This is my good friend Joe Biden," right? Yeah. And the biggest mistake in 2016 was when during a debate, Bernie says, "I don't give a damn about the damn emails," or whatever the fuck. That was a catastrophic error.
Correct.
And the reality is that Hillary Clinton loved it because it discredited it as an attack against her, which was what he should have leaned in. He should have said, you can't vote for Hillary Clinton. She's too risky. She's facing criminal charges for the mishandling of the server. He should have leaned into the negatives, and he didn't because he was like, well, there's a certain niceness that a lot of people that are on the left, a lot of the people that are on the left are not like me. They more come to the left because they're good-hearted people who want to help others. And I have all those agreements, but then they have this, as I said, Mr. Rogers mentality. They want the kumbayas. Yeah. They want to reach across. They always want to coalesce. And it's like, well, before magnanimity in victory, you have to get the victory part. If you want to be magnanimous, you have to win. Before you win, you're not in control. And I think that was always, kind of the tenor of what I'm saying in these days is like, we have to look at we have to be where the people are. We have to talk to them in a plain spoken manner. We have to offer them real material change. We have to show them accountability too. And we have to listen to what they're saying. And I don't feel like, a lot of the online left in particular has that kind of mentality. It's very much more a left of a certain type of noblesse oblige, an upper middle class, well-educated, intellectual, intelligentsia type left. as opposed to a left that comes from the working class, that comes from the masses, that has their interests at heart. And so we have to, I'm not saying that these issues about sexism or racism or transphobia or, bigotry, xenophobia or any of that is not important. That is important. But we have to have a movement that unites us around these, that is inviting, that brings people in no matter what member of the working class they are. I don't care if you're a white man from, West Virginia, or you are a not undocumented person, in the West Coast. Everybody should be welcome in this movement. And it shouldn't be about, playing these kind of identity social engineering games with each other where we're like, well, Bernie Sanders is a white man. I don't know that we could trust him. We should have Kamala Harris. And then what does she do? She turns around and says, I want to deport 5 million people.
But at the end of the day, that was a class-based decision by the Hillary Clinton establishment to crush the grassroots. And really, we talk about it all the time. This is a class war. We're having a class war. It's actually global. And the problem with, and I know you mean Democrats, but they're not left. I mean, let's agree. They're right of center anywhere else. So, but the problem with them is they are not the left. That's exactly the problem. So when we say that the left isn't doing this, no, because that's not the left. I don't know what that is, but they're not the left. The actual left doesn't have a party.
Not to interrupt you, but I like to. I have a lot of things I talk about, but there's a David Graeber. I don't know if you know who this is, but he is a anthropologist, sociologist, historian, and he would talk about what's called the radical center. This is actually the way they talk about it in France. Americans are very provincial in that we don't learn the politics of other countries that don't speak English. So like, Mexico has the most successful left-wing party in the world right now. And it's one of the only places where a left-wing politics is succeeding, but Americans don't seem to know about it because they speak Spanish. And it's very inconvenient for the powers that be that a left-wing movement is winning 70% of the vote, right? They don't want people to see that. Anyway, so what the French say about it's the radical center. They're trying to engineer a politics where you have this kind of like, I would say, centrist, bureaucratic, neoliberalism, right? Versus kind of clown fascism. It's not even really fascism because they don't really do the camps and the irredentism, but you have this like bumbling idiot. And basically they want to create the situation where it's like, liberals feel in the upper class feel like superior to the right wing. And the right wing goes through this pantomime of bigotry to distract you from the class consciousness, right?
You sound like you're talking about the Trump people. Like this is exactly the same thing that's happening here.
No, that's what I'm saying. So so that's the Marie Le Pen's, right? And you have Marie Le Pen's, and that's the far right. And in the center, you have Macron. That's Obama, right? Obama went and endorsed Macron. And then on the left, you have a guy named Mélenchon, who's like the Bernie Sanders with an edge, right?
Right.
And so that's the situation in France. It's very similar to what we are, except in our country, everybody is forced into this Democratic Party because of the way our system is designed, right? You have to be one of the big two parties or else you're fucked. You're never going to win just because of the way that the system is designed. And so long story short, we have this, you say it's international, and that's exactly right. Every single country, no matter what what language they're speaking right now, has a politics that's very similar to ours, which is like crush the left, make it irrelevant, make it quiet, at the most allow this like weird kind of identity obsessed radical liberalism to represent the left. It kind of like woke shit, but everybody hates, it's like, it's not the idea of being aware of oppression, which is good and common sense. It is about like, I don't know that you should be speaking, white man, like that kind of stuff. Or don't clap. It's too, I have sensory issues. Don't clap during the speech,
Dude,
that kind of stuff.
You're definitely going to be back on our podcast again for sure. You're definitely speaking my language.
I was going to say, he's like your spirit animal.
Yeah. I'm just saying, well, the thing is like, people, it's funny because people used to call me a class reductionist for a very long time. And I was very supportive of, I've been protesting at BLM back in like right after right after it started. You know what I mean? When it had 20% approval. And, you know, as opposed to in 2020, when it was kind of a more majoritarian position. And I don't say this because of I need to have protest bona fides. It's just the idea that just because I imagine a politics that unites us across class means that I'm disregarding these other issues. I'm not disregarding them. I'm actually centering them and recognizing that the stigmas that are being used to divide us are simply there to distract us from that commonality. I don't know if I was rambling too much. The point I was trying to make is this constructed radical centrist politics of the Democratic Party and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton and the godfather of it, Barack Obama, is intended to basically, as you said, Jen, deny the idea of the left or obfuscate the left with the status quo, which everybody hates.
Right. They took it and ran it to the right and left the left without any representation. And that's the truth. So there's no Labor Party. There's no left representation in our federal electoral politics. There's no voice of the left. There's no anti-war voice. There's none of that with any real anything. And so it's a uniparty, like a unibrow. It's sort of it's merged together in the middle, and it's not a good look.
And Mike, I think another great example is, when you look at, if you're looking for anti-war voices right now in this country, you have a much louder anti-war voice from true libertarian Thomas Massey than you even do from AOC. And to me, that's a reflection of sort of the failure of what has kind of transpired. The movement in many ways is dead. A lot of times the people in cases like Alex and, I'm not even counting the lady from Massachusetts. Her name is slipping me right now, but
Warren.
No. The Congresswoman,
Ayanna Pressley.
Oh yeah.
The only true person in the Democratic Party that in the House anyway that I think measures up to Massey is probably Rashida Tlaib. She was at least willing to stand on principle when it came to what was going on in Gaza, and she was the only one. I mean,
Summer Lee, but that's Summer Lee. There's a few people that I like. Summer Lee is a good example out of Pittsburgh, which is very funny because Western Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh in particular is associated with this sort of I call them smokestack voter, which is a person that is more socially conservative, religious, but also very economically left wing.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And this type of person it used to be the backbone of the Democratic Party. And I'm not saying that we should build the party around these guys and adopt backward social mores. I'm just saying that this type of person used to vote on economics and now they don't.
Yeah, but you know what, though?
Maybe they do because they don't, there is nothing coming from the Democrats.
Well, to be fair, if you remember, there's been like 5 or 6 party shifts in our nation's history over 250 years. And one of the things that made the FDR coalition so vital to the successes of passing what is still considered today the most important piece of social upward mobility legislation, and that being Social Security. You're talking about a coalition at the time that was fully the Dixie South. And it wasn't until JFK that it really started to shift. Even Adlai Stevenson kind of had that same kind of FDR type of a coalition. But once JFK came into the mix, he kept that economic populism, but he married it with the realities of social upward mobility, especially for communities of color, and a lot of things that ultimately ended up transpiring during the 1960s. But I still believe that since Jack was assassinated, the Democratic Party has been going straight to hell. There's a lot of things that transpired over the 60s and 70s. Everybody gives a lot of flack to LBJ, and rightfully so. I think he's one of the worst we've ever had. But Jimmy Carter did a lot of things. I know it's Jimmy Carter Day, but we cannot deny the things that he did that ultimately led to Reagan, and a lot of things that led to these anti-labor shifts in our economic and political landscape. And to me, I also think that Bernie had his moments, especially in 2016, that I felt that he should have stuck to. I thought that the best moment he had in that entire run was the night after he won the Michigan primary and he came down to Miami and he had that debate. I thought he boxed Hillary into a corner. I thought she was going to quit. He literally, he jabbed her, he uppercut her, and then he hooked her right into the ropes and she couldn't get out. And then, of course, for the coup de grace, he said to, I don't want to talk about the head of Goldman Sachs. He said I was dangerous for Wall Street. And he's right, I am dangerous. And it's like, yeah, you could say he was radical, and it was probably a miscalculation and that the establishment was going to crush him by any means necessary, including cheating him, which they did. But it was the start of what was necessary. And that movement, unfortunately, in my opinion, has been severely fractured since probably a year or two after Trump ended up winning. And I think that's Bernie's greatest asset, but it's also his greatest sin at the same time.
I think there's a lot of, Monday morning quarterbacking we all can do. And I think one of the things that I would always tell people is that whenever someone wants to rush you along from doing Monday morning quarterbacking, or in the military, what we would call debriefing, right? Like the moment, you have a battle or you have a fight, whether you win or lose, you need to thoroughly study it. And one of the things that I found is, like, I was one of the very few people that actually, I got 49 or 50 out of 51, states in 2020, or excuse me, 2024. I basically predicted Kamala Harris's. The one state I got wrong is I thought she would hold Wisconsin. That ended up being the swing state she lost by the narrowest margin. But, and I was one of the very few people that was just completely pessimistic. I thought it was clear she was going to lose.
I was, let me tell you something. I said she was going to lose from the get-go as well. I knew that all those numbers were make-believe that they had.
Well, the thing is, like, the numbers were never very good for her, to be honest. And there was a lot of signals about, youth turnout, the war in Gaza, the economic lack of an economic message, the fact that she embraced this kind of warmongering foreign policy. I think for me, the moment when I knew she was going to lose was actually her acceptance speech at the DNC. I thought it was the worst DNC speech I'd ever heard from a nominee. Like, worse than Hillary, worse than worse than Biden. It was disastrous. It was disastrously bad.
I mean, come on, don't you want to have the most lethal fighting force in the entire world?
And an economic policy approved by Goldman Sachs?
Well, it's not only that, it's just there was nothing for us. And when I say us, I mean the American people. Americans do have a jingoistic attitude. We have this unearned pride. The analogy the analogy that I use is the guy, the depressing guy at the bar who's 55 years old, and he's wearing his ratty varsity jacket and he's drinking a light beer, and he wants to regale you about the time when he won the state championship in high school. That's America. We're pounding our chest about winning World War II. And the people that fought it are dead. It's like, what are you celebrating? This is a country that has been coasting, as you rightfully point out, on the investments made in the New Deal, 80 years ago. And when you look at the fires in California, the ones that I got an alert as soon as I joined this call, it's because power lines are falling down that were erected in 1906 and haven't been worked on since. And that is the state of our country. And a lot of people, they almost feel shame in acknowledging our deficits, the shame of how far behind we are. And when you did that kind of survey of the 20th century, I have some disagreements, on various points. Like, I would say that, the Wallace coup in 44 at the DNC is the most important thing that happened in the 20th century. Also, the fact that, unfortunately, blood pressure medication wasn't invented yet, because if they had blood pressure medication for FDR in 43,
then he would have been there, and Henry Wallace would have still been on the ticket.
Yes, not only. Well, I mean, we would have not had the Cold War as we had.
Absolutely, I agree.
Like, that was a road that didn't have to be traveled, right? And everything that kind of cascades from that. The fact that FDR dies, and then the labor movement is destroyed by Taft-Hartley, and the veto overrides, and I personally think the worst president in American history is Harry Truman, but it's okay. And the reason why I say that is because he created basically a politics that destroyed the left in America and made it basically, he walked us right into the McCarthy era. He basically, the Dulles brothers,
problem.
and a lot of the anti-left abroad was also done at home.
Yeah.
All the stuff.
His greatest, Harry Truman, you
most
could say
overrated president by far.
I would definitely say he's the most overrated for sure. But perhaps his greatest legacy in many ways, as it stands today, he created CIA.
Yeah, exactly.
That's one hell of a legacy, baby.
And also just, and we still see this. I'm sorry for jumping at so many topics and rambling, but I think all this stuff is very important to around a central unity, which is the idea that the left needs to recognize that the Democrats, as they currently are not our allies. It doesn't mean that we surrender the Democratic Party to them. Many people are like, oh, we tried that and it failed. And it is true. We did try that and it did fail. But the one thing I would tell you is Bernie Sanders did not get into the Senate on his first try, or the House on his first try. He got like 2% of the vote. And then he tried again. He got 10% of the vote. And he realized, oh, you're doing really well in Burlington. So he ran for mayor there and won by 10 votes. And then when he went into the mayor's office, the Democrats and Republicans united and said, we're going to fuck you. We're not even going to let you hire a secretary. We're going to do everything we can to make you the unsuccessful mayor so we can give it back to the Democrats. And he ended up, fighting them head on and bringing on a slate of progressive people into the city council. And then he was able to enact his policies, and and then people realized, wow, he's the best mayor we've ever had. And he won a re-election twice. And it was a cascading effect. But the point, and then that's when he was able to run for Congress and win, eventually, because he ran and the Democrats ran and the Republicans ran and the Republican won. And then he ran again and the Democrats were defeated by him and barely got any vote. And he was able to flip it from red to Bernie, from Republican to Bernie. And that is it took, a decade plus to get to that point. So
keep in mind, this was in Vermont. Imagine
Vermont used to be a red state.
Oh,
this
yes.
is the thing of people that I said. It was I think Vermont didn't vote for FDR. It's the only one of two states that didn't vote for. This is the Republican state, right? And it was Bernie Sanders politics that flipped it from Republican to now it's the most progressive state.
So he always said that he didn't want to end up like Ralph Nader, but why do you think he lost his nerve?
Well, I think it's a calculation. A couple things here. I think Bernie Sanders really, there's a couple of strengths and a couple of weaknesses. The strength is his consistency and his pragmatism. I think he's probably too pragmatic, and a lot of the criticism of him is that he's too pie in the sky. But the reality is he's always been someone who's trying to figure out what's the best that I can do for working people. I'll take, I'll ask for the loaf, and then if I get a slice, great. And I'll grab that for us, and then I'll come back. And he sees it as this kind of actual incremental program of just grabbing as much as you can for the working class. And I think he didn't see the opportunities that were there. And I think he kind of lost his nerve to really make the break with the Democratic Party. And he had relationships with people like Joe Biden that went back decades, and there's this kind of collegiality, the collegiality of the Senate, right? That is something that is, I think, wrong and bad.
It is. And the politics in America are changing. I think it's fair to say that we are heading to a place now where the politics are changing. And since you are in California, and obviously we want to cover this, and we've got a few different clips that we want to play. But the first one, which I think is reflective in how the politics must change. And Jen, I don't know if you've seen this, but the still president of the United States met with the unfortunate governor of California, and they had some things to say to the media that they thought was important regarding, this sort of apocalyptic wildfire that's taking over Southern California. So here's what happened earlier today.
Today, we're going so maybe still standing, I'm not sure. But the good news is, I'm a great grandfather as of today. Granddaughter, and baby girl, baby boy. So I remember this day for a while, long for subsequent. Thank you. Breath. Very okay. Thank you so much, everybody. Make your way out. Thank you, Brad. Thank you so much. Make your way out. Keep your making way in March. Please go this way. Thank you.
It's like he's just standing there. He's just doubting. You know,
he's checked out. I mean, come on. He hasn't been there in a while. Nobody.
Well, I would say in a while is true. It's in a while is before the 2020 election.
I think he was. You go back to 2016,
like
and
this
he was
guy
already starting.
Like this guy's been demented for the entire time. And actually, one of the major points that I would draw people, you know, sometimes people will hear me and think I'm a little bit mean or a little bit mean spirited. But
speak to me. I'm with you. I like it. I'm a mean bitch.
Like I would say that the thing about Biden is he was transparently demented during the 2020 campaign, and he was saved by the fact that, you know, we had the global pandemic. People were like, oh, we can't do rallies, you know, because we don't want to spread the disease. So he got to stay in the basement. He got to hide, you know. People were kind of disappointed with Trump's, you know, how erratic he was during the pandemic. And people were kind of like just tired of it. And then the most important factor was it was very easy to vote in 2020. You know, so everybody got a ballot in the mail. It was easy to turn in, plenty of time. It was sort of like the voting system we should have. And all of those combined, you know, Joe Biden was able to get across the finish line. But it was very apparent that he wasn't there. And one of the things is very early in his presidency, you know, I was willing to listen to the Build Back Better stuff. At the time, I was like, okay, if we could get this policy, this policy, this policy, that would be incredibly good. I'm in support of that. But then I saw how it was going. And it was like, oh, yeah, they're just cutting everything. Oh, wow, they're splitting the Build Back Better apart, and they're putting all the corruption into one bill and all the good programs in the other bill. Guess what happens? Only the corruption passed. You know, a bill that ended up being so far right that Mitch McConnell voted for it. Do you think Mitch McConnell was voting for social programs that help the poor, or nothing but privatizations and giveaways to his supporters?
The only bills that I support are supporting bills that support my corporate owners and screw working people. And I will continue to do that until I'm dead. Oh, no, excuse me.
I'm not sure he's not dead. He's like The Walking Dead.
Well, I would say, you know, and what was very interesting was there was absolutely no pressure put upon Mangione and Sinema, right? And Joe Biden didn't do any whip votes, didn't whip any votes. He didn't call them and say, hey, you know, you need to put the child care in, or make the child tax credit permanent, or you need to do this, or you need to do that, or else, right? So Mangione and Sinema got no pressure. And at the time they were saying, I'm not getting any pressure from the White House. And so they were just allowed to go to the corporate lobbyists and be like, okay, what giveaways do you want? Okay, we're going to block any kind of social programs. What giveaways do you guys want? And they thought, like, yeah, I mean, there's going to be no pushback. And the
second he said that the parliamentarian won't let me do it, that was the end of his presidency, and it ended in the first 100 days.
Correct.
It's over.
Absolutely correct. And that was seen as a signal, like, oh, you know, the trough is here, and fuck the worker. And, you know, none of the things that he promised to work on in the Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden, you know, Unity Commission. There's a list of policies they wanted to pass. They did none of them. Actually, none. And, you know, it was very funny because, like, it's hard to put your brain back into 2019. But in 2019, people were legitimately fighting over public option versus Medicare for all, right? Like the centrists were like, we got to do a public option because it has 5% more in the polls. It's at 75%, and Medicare for all is at 70%. And so therefore we should just do the thing that is like pretty good, but even more popular. And then the moment, you know, Joe Biden gets in office, the word public option never left his lips. And it was like, you know, the 2019 brain and the 2020 brain of like arguing over whether we're going to do a public option or Medicare for all was all bullshit at the time. And we, those of us, I mean, I knew it and I said it at the time. They're never going to do a public option. You're an idiot. If you fall for this, you're a dope.
No.
And Joe Biden.
And to piggyback on that, Mike, which I think is important that a lot of people should recognize is that, okay, so let's say you want to point the finger at Sinema and Manchin.
No.
Now you're going to be able to point the finger at Fetterman. He's going to do the same thing. And it looks like Gallego.
Slotkin? I mean, the CIA agent that they just hired
in Michigan, and it looks like Gallego, who pretended that he was progressive for the longest time, he's now on board with the bullshit. So it doesn't matter.
Gallego and Fetterman actually ran the same playbook, which is like get attention by leaning left, and then when you get into a position, then you just. And that actually was Sinema's plan. Actually, Sinema was a Green Party member. This is something that people don't understand.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
Is that so there is a certain type of opportunism that we have to be aware of, a certain type of orientation toward politics and there's a certain cynicism that's starting to rise. And this is the kind of thing that I think is very deadly for our movement, which is like, I call it stupid cynicism, which is a very inartful way of describing it. But basically the idea that all politicians are the same. It's pointless. It's hopeless. Why even care about politics? They're all corrupt. And like, while that message has very important pieces of elements of truth to it, it's actually a message that causes you to become complacent, apathetic, and disengaged. And that's exactly what they're aiming for. Yeah. Right. And something that I tell my audience is we just have to win once. We just have to get across the finish line and grab hold. And that is what FDR did, you know. In his first 100 days, he passed 17 major pieces of legislation. You know, he was able to shut down the banks. He was able to, you know, set up the federal, the FTC, he was the SEC. He was able to, you know, create a nationalized electrification of the South, which is still owned by the government today, the Tennessee Valley Authority, which provides electric power with the highest reliability and lowest cost for 9 states in America. Run by the government. Can you imagine someone proposing that now? Social Security, the idea that they're going to give money to every person over 65 every month, cash.
Well, we've said many a times that
like these ideas could never pass.
Corporate special interests have captured our government. That's why the government doesn't work for the people anymore. It's that simple. But since somebody is going to run for president in 2028, and we're going to have to just accept the fact that that hasn't changed. What if this, I mean, listen, I'm tired of, we're all tired of celebrity culture. But if there is one person who's come from celebrity culture who seems to have pretty good bona fides, including fighting for the firefighters who suffered numerous amounts of health.
You mean Jon Stewart?
As a result of 9/11, here's good old Jon Stewart.
Fail, you pay for it. But when they succeed, it's theirs. They socialize their losses and privatize their gains. Why do we allow that?
Consider this. Wealthy people do not stash their billions in safe deposit boxes loaded with $100 bills. They don't do that. And they don't spend it all at the mall. They don't spend like crazy. No.
Yes, they
Wealthy
do.
people invest. It is investment that creates jobs and economic growth.
Because they already have everything they need.
That all this money flowing towards corporate and moneyed interests is actually for your benefit. The government intervention for corporations is our free market. But government intervention for workers is socialism. And that's the reason for the socialism scaremongering. It's a false choice. To make you believe that this country has but 2 options. A socialist, authoritarian, hamburger-less Venezuelan nightmare, or accept the status quo, where large corporations benefit from government help, then use some of those profits to lobby the same government for more government help. They want you to believe that in a free market, while your wages stay low, someday the largesse will eventually trickle down. And in the meantime, enjoy watching your tax dollars help billionaires launch themselves into fucking space.
Yeah, you know, okay, the thing about John, and it's not that I'm anti-celebrity culture or anything like that. I'm in favor of anyone who's a left-winger who wins. You know, that's kind of my pragmatism. What I would say about picking and choosing any particular candidate right now is, as I said before with Bernie Sanders earlier, I said he was at 0.5% at 2015. January. You know, we don't know who's. I'm going to keep myself open to the possibilities. I'm going to look and see who I feel like has the fire. You know, I feel like Jon Stewart might have a little bit of the Mr. Rogers disease as well. And this is why, you know, like I personally am partial to Sean Fain, which is the president of the UAW, because he is very left wing, very much. He uses the language of eat the rich. He is part of a powerful, organized, you know, political and social and economic movement. He actually does the thing that you and I are talking about, right? Which is makes the politics, the left-wing politics, and turns that into material rewards for his workers. He wins contracts. He organizes factories. He puts pressure. He has those relationships with politicians, but it comes from actually, it's the workers that uplifted him, right? I know who Sean Fain is because he was voted for by workers. You know, he wasn't made by Hollywood. You know, he wasn't made by media. He took power by organizing. So that's why, if you're asking me to pick someone, that's who I would tell you who I'm leaning towards is draft Sean Fain. And right now he's organizing a general strike for May 1st, 2028. Except it's not just somebody tweeting it and saying, you better not, you know, go to work tomorrow. I'm declaring general strike. It's a leader of one of the largest, most powerful unions in America saying, hey, let's have all of our contracts expire on the same day. Yep. And so that we can all negotiate against the capitalist class. You know, yeah, there are some things about him. You know, listen, UAW made a statement against Gaza. How many other large left-wing organizations have even done that? But they ultimately endorsed Kamala Harris, which was a UAW decision, right? You know, so does that mean that he's bad? I mean, no. I mean, if we're saying Jon Stewart, then I think, you know, I have my criticisms of Sean Fain pale in comparison. Now, listen, I'm not against Jon Stewart or anyone. You know, I'd rather Danny DeVito. You know, whatever. It doesn't matter. There's plenty of people that I like that are famous, right? And I don't think it really matters if you're a politician or not. For me, it's more about the substance. I'm an ideologue, you know, or I'm very ideological. I shouldn't say I'm an ideologue, but you get what I mean. I'm very ideological in the sense that that's what I look at. You know, it's my neurodivergence is I'm all about what's real, what's material, show me the money, show me the real shit. And so, you know, if Jon Stewart could do it, fine. But we need somebody with sharp elbows, somebody who's not afraid to do it. I would draw your attention back to Mexico, right? How did AMLO manage to defeat the right and the left and start a new party and become president and then have his, you know, now it's Claudia Sheinbaum, which is a, you know, amazing story. Why were they so successful? Well, they leaned into new media. They did live streams. AMLO did a 3-hour live stream every day. And he said, this is what I'm doing. These are my enemies. These are the bad people. These are and he was able to get around the corporate owned media. You know, regular Mexicans could tune into that stream, see what their government was doing for them, and they could feel it. They could see it. They could see the trains getting built. They could get you know, obviously Mexico still has a lot of problems and they're, you know, and there's a lot of things they're working on to fix. And I would say that I'm to the left of AMLO and that party. But
I would definitely say that the rejection of the corporate establishment, because we know who's going to run for president in 28. It's pretty obvious who's going to run. Newsom's going to run. Whitmer's going to run. Pritzker's going to run. Bashir probably is going to run. And of course, Shapiro's going to run. So you're going to have your smorgasbord of people that are governors in this country right now that are going to run for president. I personally think Sean Fain is fantastic. And I also think that Mr. O'Brien is fantastic as well. I know Sean O'Brien's not everybody's cup of tea, but
I have a problem with Sean.
I like the Teamsters. I think that there are a lot of conservative Teamsters. It is what it is. But if it's about the labor movement, the Teamsters are as badass a union as you're going to find. We need more Sean Fains and Sean O'Briens and less Randy Weingardens. That's what we need.
Oh, definitely. I mean, yeah, you know, I agree with you completely on that. I think part of what makes, you know, an organized labor movement, I think the miscalculation of speaking at the RNC, like I get what he's trying to do. But the reality is that, you know, there's some people that are just enemies. You know, sometimes you need to make a friend-enemy distinction. I think this is another pathology of Americans, which is the idea that, oh, you know, I want to convert everyone, and I want to. Nobody is left. Some people need to be left behind. Some people need to be overcome. Some people
But why
need
do
to be
we all
defeated.
need to agree? That's the thing.
We don't
have
all
this
need to agree.
For
Yeah.
dichotomy in this country. If one thing is good, the other thing is bad. If one person's right, the other person's wrong. Instead of the fact that no, multiple people could be wrong and multiple people can be
True,
right.
totally.
And there's no concept of nuance. And that to me is the biggest problem. And the Democrats are much more insistent on writing off people than I find the Republicans are. They'll write them off. You don't agree with us on every single thing. Bye-bye. You're not one of us. And you know what? Nobody wants to be one of them. Like I'm no longer affiliated with the party in any way. I'm not even registered as a Democrat anymore. I don't think that there's anything that they have that they've offered me that I'm willing to support or vote for.
Yeah, no, I want to, there's a distinction that I want to make that I think is very important. There is regular people and there are media and political elites.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And so, like, if somebody says, like, I recently criticized Kyle Kalinske because he went on Project Liberal stream.
Yeah, seriously, what the fuck, man?
I stopped following Kyle as soon as he shilled for Joe back in whenever that was.
Well, but let me. I'm not somebody who's saying I'm going to abandon Kyle, but what I will say is this, which is, why did I criticize it? Is it because I don't think we should try to persuade liberals? Well, it depends what you mean by liberal, right? If you mean the wine mom who votes for Democrats and cares about her community and, you know, is organizing for the PTA and is a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, absolutely we should be trying to persuade that person. 100,000%. I love that woman, right? That woman is a good-hearted, civically minded person. Yeah, she's a Democrat. She's been misled. Maybe she watches too much MSNBC, whatever the fuck. That woman, absolutely. A 20-year-old neoliberal ideologue who is trying to create a think tank to get money from billionaires so that they can crush left-wing populism, which is what Project Liberal is, right? It's an anti-left-wing ideological project, which is targeting Bernie Sanders and AOC or the Squad or anybody to their left, and they're trying to discredit us, and it's basically just this generation's version of the New Democrats or the Blue Dogs or whatever. You're a fucking idiot. That person is not gettable. They're an ideological elite. They are enemies of us. If you give them any kind of credibility, if you try to build what are you building bridges with? You're building bridges with air. They don't have anything. They are just trying to obfuscate the situation. It's not, and they call themselves liberal because they're explicitly rejecting people like Bernie Sanders. They're explicitly rejecting us.
Jen gave me shit because, and listen, I'm not proud of this dude. We've had some people on the podcast that probably should never have had on, but I actually had to.
Oh, I know who you're going to mention, and I never would have invited her on.
So I had the dollar store knockoff Melissa McCarthy on our show, Rachel Bittkoffer, and she ended up being she ended up being as bad as you would have imagined. And I think that was like that one experience where you walk away just thinking, yeah, there's no point. Don't bother.
The thing about somebody like Rachel is she's another. There's people that use the left to grift. Okay, and this is
do tell.
This is just the reality, which is, you know, if you want to get into, I want to explain some of these social dynamics to those of us that are a little bit more neurodivergent, like myself. Basically, to get into the elite Democratic Party, there's a couple different ways, right? The first is you come from money. You go as a legacy student to Ivy League schools. You get an internship as a communications intern in DC.
Mike, you're not talking about anybody in particular that you may have or may not have worked with in the recent.
Honestly don't even know if I am. Dog. This is an archetypical person. You know, like there's a lot of these.
I'm talking about somebody at the Majority Report right now who I don't think very highly of, but that's fine.
Oh well, I don't know.
You stop. I hate it.
I don't know if that's true of her or not. I'm just explaining that there's a type of person that's a communications staffer. When you meet somebody in Congress, like in a congressional campaign, and they're like a 20-something, and they're like, "Oh, I'm a communications intern." You're like, What? Huh? Why'd they hire you? What speeches have you written? Like, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, because they went to an Ivy on legacy, and their parents are wealthy and they're some sort of elite, and that's how they get into politics. Like it's a networking thing, right? And so they're fast tracked. Lindy Lee is another example of this type of person. Sure. That's a perfect example. Lindy Lee, right? Comes from money, worked in Wall Street, instantly gets juiced to the top, and is now a national figure for some reason, and they've never done anything but have money, right? Then the other way is like, you incrementally go up the ranks, you get elected as a state representative and a state senator, and then, you slowly build up, you could go to a state school and do this, right? Like, you go state senator, state rep, and you're a machine politician, right? This is kind of more like Kamala Harris, right? Kamala Harris is more of a machine politician. She's not somebody who was like super academically gifted, right?
Clearly.
And then you have the third way, which is an outsider progressive-y wing and overcoming a weak machine and getting into power that way, which occasionally happens, right? You get a really bad machine politician, somebody can come from the left-wing lane and win. Like, these are the ways that you get into the game. And somebody like Rachel Bitcofer is somebody who was cynically trying to take the left-wing lane so that as soon as they got in, they could sell out, right? Like, the first two groups pre-sold, and then, you have the pre-sold, the person who comes from such a high status family that they're not selling out. They're the people that buy. They buy the politicians, right? That's where they come from. Then you have the people that are intentionally following, they're a soldier, foot soldier who earns their way up the ranks. And then you have somebody like Rachel Bitcofer, who is a grifter by, we need to be more left wing. That was her whole thing in 2020. I don't know if or 2019. I don't know if you know her, sure. But her whole thing was like, we need to be feed more red meat to the base. We need to lean to the left. And that's why I support Elizabeth Warren over Bernie Sanders, because Bernie Sanders is just an old white man, and it's past his prime. Now we need to be Elizabeth Warren. And that was her whole shtick, right? Which is, we need to be left, but we need to be left with Elizabeth Warren, right? And then, she kind of like got a little bit of mainstream cred through that. And then she immediately, sold out completely and just, became a machine person. And then now, I don't even know, there's no coherence to Rachel Bitcofer, right? No. Like, she's just chasing whatever is the conventional wisdom now.
But that's where, and that's why, Jen and I we rarely talk about other content creators, but, I've seen that, the people like the Bitcofer, Brooklyn Dad Defiant, all of those types of people, they're all on the dole. This is all about money. They have no moral center. It doesn't matter. They are whores for the political establishment.
Oh, definitely.
And listen, we are going to have, we're going to have our friend Martha Bueno from Miami on the podcast. She works directly with Thomas Massey, and she just blew the lid. She was on our podcast about a year ago. We're going to bring her back on, possibly even next week. She just blew the lid on DC Drano and Jack Posobiec, and basically showing how these guys are just grifters on the right. These guys just do it for money. They don't believe in anything. They don't fucking care. They're out there pimping cryptocurrency just so that they can make money.
Of course. Yeah, grifting on the right wing is more respected because, like, they have a more sociopathic streak where it's just like, if you're at the top, then you deserve to be at the top. And so however you get to the top, it doesn't matter. Like, it's like, it's Vivek Ramaswamy, right? Like, how did he get to the top? He had his mom cook up a fake study about how this proven ineffective Alzheimer's drug was actually a promising candidate. He spun off a company lying about, promising study, and then, did an IPO with his mom and sold a bunch of shares to a bunch of dopes on Wall Street, cashed out his billions or hundreds of millions. And then it turns out that drug was actually it was actually garbage all along. And so he became rich by literally committing what amounts to a scam. And, to a Republican, well, he's a successful entrepreneur. It doesn't matter that he never produced anything of value. He was able to sell something for a lot of money. It doesn't matter if it works.
Kind of like Trump.
Exactly like Trump.
No, right? Listen, excuse me. Everything I sell is 100% real.
He's like a
10th
completely
grade.
failed business person with the Nepo baby situation, screwed over everyone he's ever been in business with, has been sued more than 1,000 times. And yet people think that's successful.
I am successful. I have the greatest lawyers, the greatest people around me. And the people are always trying to screw me. They're really terrible. But the fact is, I made history. I'm one of only 2 presidents ever to win 2 non-consecutive terms. Move over, Cleveland. It's now time for Trump.
You're the only president to ever be twice impeached. So there's that too.
That's also fake news. They were totally against me from day one. They were totally doing it for shits and giggles. I am
fake news.
No, totally fake news. No, but you know what? As Jen, as you like to say many times, he is our president. He is representative of the United States in so many ways.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
He is us.
And that's why when you see somebody, because for a lot of us who got into this, you know, Jen and I had been working together on her first congressional campaign, and we had started doing sort of like these live streams and stuff over the course of her congressional race in 20 against Wasserman Schultz. And then after the election, you know, figuring how do we still stay involved without just always running for office? Because in South Florida, especially in Broward County, that's all anybody wants to do is just run for office. That's all that anybody does. So we decided that's not the answer. There's got to be other ways. And so we transitioned and did this podcast. And one of the people that we would always watch was Kyle Kulinski. You know, Secular Talk was always a big show, and he always had a lot of great takes, and he really was spot on about a number of these things. But, you know, as Jen, as you like to joke, is that maybe when he just started dyeing his hair to be, you know, be the Ken doll, it's like.
Well, I had stopped before that. I mean, I stopped following him as soon as he jumped on the got to get behind Joe bandwagon. As soon as he jumped on that, I was like, I'm just done.
But now he's going on these types of podcasts, these podcasts that make it their people
mission to defeat the left. Yeah, that's what's crazy.
There are so many people that we have cross-streamed with, cross-networked with that are on the populist right, not the Christian conservative right. We don't deal with that. But when you're talking about people that have, you know, kind of in that Teamsters mindset of working class, are more socially conservative, we get along so much better with people like that than the shit libs. The biggest shit lib of them all is definitely David Pakman. But you can look.
Don't do that again.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to do it again, but I'm just saying.
Well, yeah, I mean, what I would say about all of that is that, you know, I come from a little bit more left-wing tradition, and I am very well-educated, well-read, and a lot of theory and things like that, and I try to make it approachable for regular people. And I'm very comfortable with the idea of having opposition to what I'm doing that I can't reconcile with and I just need to overcome. It doesn't mean like regular ass people. Like, you know, if you took me to Thanksgiving and I was talking to, you know, a regular Republican populist voter, I would probably convince them over to my side because I understand the way they think. I understand that they've been duped, you know, and it's a matter of planting seeds, right? That being said, you know, somebody like a Charlie Kirk is not somebody who's ever going to, you know, work with us on anything meaningful. You know, it's just the reality. Like,
he's a douche.
Like, these people are just
the only thing that
ideologically opposed to us, and they take billionaire money. And, you know, the thing about
Mike, that's really what it comes down to, because I actually went to one of the Turning Point USA events out in Tampa, and guys, just look at who funds the organization.
You can't imagine how much that costs to have those kind of events.
Oh my God!
You know what I mean?
To take out the Tampa Bay Convention Center,
Yeah,
these things are millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Like, they're freaking crazy.
Yeah.
You're going to bring 20,000 people there for a convention? Like, this is serious shit. And you've got these massive. Again, it's the Koch brothers. It's billionaires that you don't even know exist.
There's 100 right-wing foundations for this kind of schlock, and that's why people do it, right? They do the pivot. The thing with Kyle is, like, I understand that right now the Democratic Party is kind of surrendering to Trump, and that the Democratic base voter has always wanted us to fight the Republicans more. Actually, like, if you went and talked to a regular MSNBC person, like, why did they pour so much money in the South Carolina Senate race or the Kentucky Senate race? It's because regular people on MSNBC fucking hate Mitch McConnell. They fucking hate Lindsey Graham, and they want to fight them, right? So they're susceptible to grifting, which is what those people did, right? They grifted with those races that were unwinnable. This, with these centrist
well, it's that whole
losers.
consultant class. That's how they
Exactly.
they don't care if they can win. They just care if they can profit off of a campaign. Khanna
Correct.
spent $500 million on staffing in a 109-day campaign.
Right.
That doesn't happen on the right, by the way.
Oh, well, we can actually talk about that because it's a very interesting point. And just let me close this first point out, though, which is just like, okay, so now that kind of resistance to Trump lane is actually open because the centrist Democrats and their hangers-on, the grifters that you brought up, they're going to follow the Democratic Party officials because that's what they're bought and paid to do. Your Oliviana, whatever her name is, those people are going to, the Harry Sassans, they're going to follow the Democratic Party off a cliff of capitulating and collaborating, right? So like the resistance to Trump lane is open. So I think that's what I see Kyle doing, which is like, okay, I'm going to try to talk to regular Democrats who stopped watching CNN and stopped watching MSNBC because they're so disgusted with how the Democrats lied to them about Trump being a fascist and this being the most important election, that Kamala Harris was going to win easily, even though Kyle said that. And I think he's trying to reach those people, which I don't think is a bad idea. But what I do think is a bad idea is using your alternative media platform to prop up the people that are literally trying to use alternative media to prop up the establishment. Project Liberal, we're never, ever going to work with them on anything. And building them up and using your multi-million platform to build them up, that's what I objected to, which is just the idea of you're trying to build bridges with somebody with no clout and who represents your ideological enemy. What are you doing? Like, what is the logic? There's no logic here. You're not creating a left-wing movement. And I do think that those of us who recognize what the Democratic Party really is have an obligation to go and try to find those disillusioned MSNBC wine moms and invite them into a progressive, populist movement that talks about real shit and is honest about things. Like, for example, California is a shithole and it's run by Democrats that have a super majority and everything fucking sucks. If vote blue, no matter who, is so good, how come Democrats can't do anything correct? Like there's a housing crisis in California, even though they're losing population. They can't build a high-speed rail in 20 fucking years, a single line. You can't build one railroad? Like what?
Yeah,
This is a technology.
You can't build a high-speed rail line from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. I mean, that is...
we just got one. We just got the Bright Line from here to Orlando, and it kills people daily. So we can't get that right. I'm just saying.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like we can't actually build anything. The streets are non-functional. There's congestion out the ass. The income inequality is disastrous. The taxes are high, and then what do you buy with that money, right? Like I would say, like, I spent a lot of time in Vienna, Austria, because of my family. I don't know if you know about if you've ever been to Vienna. But
I was there very briefly a long time ago.
In Vienna, 60% of people live in social public,
housing,
or nonprofit housing, right?
Yeah.
80% of people are qualified for it, right? And there is basically no homelessness. I want you to. They have an incredible public transit system that when you walk on, it's an honor system.
I know. I was thankful for that.
And it's like this kind of society, these kind of basic functions are actually not that hard. They only spend $400 million a year building social and public housing, in Vienna, which has 2 million people. And they end up, I think they produce something like 7,000 new apartments every year or something with that money. In San Francisco, they spent $700 million on homelessness. And the problem got worse. Oh, yeah. And that's a city of 800,000 people.
Because where did that money really go?
It was stolen. It was stolen by the nonprofit industrial complex. And like that is graft that the Democratic Party is corrupt.
I was just going to say that is so much worse in the Democratic Party than the Republican Party. It is not even funny.
Well,
It
the
is-
Republicans are corrupt in their own ways, you
Of
know,
course.
and like I don't want anybody to think that the like there's one siren song that you have to hold yourself back and be aware of, which is the idea of the shit libs are so fucking evil and bad, I want to own them. And you see one group of people does occasionally own the shit libs, and that's the Republicans. And so people get attracted to like, I need to own these people, and so they start feeling themselves pulled toward the Republicans. The Republicans are just as bad.
No,
Like,
they are not
that's
our friend. And we
yeah,
never purport
exactly.
that they're our friend. However, I personally have taken greater issue with the Democratic Party for a few reasons. One, it was my party, and I joined it when I was 18 under this premise that it was sort of the left party, the working party. And so I go after my own house, right? You clean your own house before you go at someone else's. So I've always been harder on them. And plus, they're the ones that pretend to be a certain way and are not. So it's sort of like Republican will just stab you in the chest and the Democrats will stab you in the back. And that is why it bothers me more. It's not that I think the Republicans are anything special. I know what they are.
Have you
But-
heard what Malcolm X said about them?
About the Republicans or
About
about
the Republicans and the Democrats? So
I know what he says about white liberals.
Okay, so Malcolm X would say that it's the wolf and the fox,
Right.
right?
That's right,
Like with
yeah.
the Republicans, they're the wolf. You're not confused. They hate you. They're coming for you. They're going to eat you. They're your enemy. The fox looks like a dog. It has a smiling face. It comes to you like a friend, right? But it's just as much of a predator. You're just fooled by the shape of the animal.
Exactly.
But it's still coming to get. It's still coming to eat you. It's still hostile to you. It just
Right. It's just
does it
it's
a different-
nicer to gay people.
It looks nicer, but it's not nice to gay people as queer people are learning. You know, they're
Right.
learning that they're expendable, right? Like trans people are learning they're expendable. Immigrants are learning they're expendable to the Democratic Party because it was never about
You must be sacrificed at the altar of
electable. Yeah, exactly.
You must. For the system is breaking and will soon be completely broken. But that's why we have these conversations. That's why it's necessary to, as Jen so eloquently puts, cross-pollinate.
I call it cross-pollinating, yes.
That is why we have these crossovers. We hope we'll be able to come on your wonderful channel at some point.
Well, you know, what I always say is, you know, we're trying to build a working class movement that has a clear ideological core. You know, you don't want to spin off in these directions where, you know, the problem that I see with like TYT or, you know, to a lesser extent, Kyle or these other people is they don't have this ideological core. They don't understand dialectical materialism. They don't understand the core of the class war. They don't, and they consider themselves progressive, and maybe they support a lot of really good policies that I would support too.
Sure.
But they don't understand that this is really a conflict that is baked into capitalism. It is a conflict between people who own or people that work and people who don't work.
I thought you were going to say people who own and people who are owned, like wage slaves.
Well, yeah. But I decided to change it. But
Because
again,
well, it's the same. I mean, but that's the thing. I actually have come to the conclusion, which is why I'm not even that interested in the electoral politics anymore. I personally do not think that democracy can cohabitate with capitalism. I think they're mutually exclusive. And so to me, it's like just a facade. And so
Correct.
it definitely has lost its luster.
well, it's a facade as long as there's not a workers' party. You know,
Yeah, well, that's the problem. And in this system, that's what this led to by this like unfettered capitalism.
Correct.
Yeah, and you know, it's very important to understand that the racial element is what keeps the working class divided, right? You know, you have these, you know, and they play upon the racial tension is a very useful tool. It's like the H-1B visa thing is very clarifying for me. You can tell if someone's a shit lib or a left liberal with their reaction to the H-1B visa things that Bernie Sanders was saying, which is like, it's not that we don't want talented immigrants to come to America. Of course we do. Like, no one's sane is against that unless you're a dyed-in-the-wool extreme racist, right? But what are the H-1B visas actually doing in our economy?
Screwing workers.
The answer is creating, first of all, replacing American workers with somebody who's going to take a lower wage, but also creating an underclass of non-citizens who are at the whim of an employer. can you organize a union if you're an H-1B visa? Can you actually fight back or ask for higher wages or object to what your employer is doing? Sure, maybe according to the law you could.
No, you're fish in a barrel.
But you are fish in the barrel, exactly. And but the capitalist class loves this because then there's a nativist versus immigrant tension, right? Because, if you're training your Indian replacement and he has different cultural mores than you, or he has a heavily accented English, right? And he eats food that you don't understand, and you're a worker and you're being replaced. It's very easy for you to slip into this bigotry and resent toward the worker. And the capitalist is sitting back and laughing and loving it because you are mad at this Indian person for taking your job. And I understand that emotionally, but it's a structural thing that has been created by the capitalists to create this anti-solidaristic feeling. And that's what the right wing is talking about, right? They want to exclude the immigrant because of the xenophobia and bigotry. The left wants to welcome them, but make them a comrade, make them equal to us. If they're going to work here, they should be paid the same. They should have citizenship. They should be able to quit their job and not get, if you're going to bring people in because they're of some sort of extraordinary skill set, they should come here with that kind of level of worker solidarity. And they should be brought into recognizing that tension between the worker and the capitalist. And that's what our society is fundamentally lacking, is that kind of conversation. And I think Bernie Sanders is really important historical figure, and I hope that he will just be the beginning of this larger trend of this kind of knowledge. And I understand totally the skepticism towards electoral politics, but what I would say is 2028 is coming. There is no front runner among the centrists.
General strike, May 1st, 2028.
Exactly. There is no front runner. The Democratic Party it's the weakest party in the Western world.
I think it's going to cease to exist, actually.
So, it is what it is. If we could seize the Democratic Party and use its ballot line and use all the people who just go in and vote Democrat and win those votes automatically, great. We'll do that. But right now in 2028, they don't have a front runner. They don't have a person. I've even heard left liberals talking positively about Gretchen Whitmer. Can I go ahead and do a quick Gretchen Whitmer hate screen?
Oh, well, we've hated on her plenty, but by all means, go ahead.
Gretchen Whitmer is the daughter of a Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO. The only reason she ever ran for governor was expressly to oppose Medicare for all. All right. She was there expressly and her
this
campaign.
I didn't know. I did not know this. Thank you.
Didn't know this?
She was recruited to run not by her father, who was a Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO, but by her mentor, who was the next Blue Cross Blue Shield CEO. And her first gubernatorial campaign was funded by health insurance executives for governor, right? So her entire reason for existing was to stop a Bernie Sanders supporting Medicare for all candidate who was probably going to win before she jumped into the race, right? And so Gretchen Whitmer basically represents this kind of hyper elite capitalist status quo. And yeah, they've done some things that are not bad policies that got passed out of the, they had a trifecta. They passed some good things that were better than before. And, I'm not going to discount everything that was passed as bad just because it was by somebody who I know is compromised. But the idea of the left or even progressives being behind her is absolutely batshit insane. She represents everything that is bad within the Democratic Party, which is a class of insurance parasites buying our politicians and then going on TikTok and feeding somebody a chip. What the fuck are you doing?
That was so disgusting.
But I will tell you, and I honestly predict that she will get about as far as Kamala did in the primary.
I think she's got no juice myself. I agree with you completely.
Unlikable. She comes off. First of all, she has the crazy eyes, and as a woman to another woman, let me tell you something. We recognize the crazy eyes, and Gretchen Whitmer has the crazy eyes. But that aside, her history. There's people that don't have clean water. She's got people being poisoned in Kalamazoo. She's not doing anything. She buried the investigation into Flint.
Yeah.
There's so many things. And so what people
But they did investigate Palestinian protesters.
Well, that's important because you never know. They're shifty.
The other reason
We're
why
a shifty bunch as Palestinian protesters.
The other reason she doesn't have a chance is because Rashida Tlaib does not play. And she has made it very clear that she will not back Whitmer. And so hopefully she stands by it. And we'll see. Just like it's going to be very interesting when Pete carpetbagging Buttigieg runs for governor.
I think you're getting the guy's name that I like, the mayor of Dearborn. I think I'd love to see him run against Pete for governor and kick his ass. He would
Pete Buttigieg is. I have one more turn of phrase that I always use, and I want to basically. This election was the teacher's pests versus the teacher's pet, or the hall monitor versus the class clown, you know? And it was very much about which person do you identify more with, right? And Pete Buttigieg represents the ultimate hall monitor type person. And if he ran for high office, and this is what actually happened in Indiana when he ran for treasurer, he was the worst performing candidate statewide.
Yeah,
like
I
worst
couldn't see how
candidate statewide, like
he
underperformed
can't win a
everyone.
statewide race in Indiana.
Mike,
that's why they have to move him to Michigan.
Mike, he had one job. There's a reason he got $25 million in Iowa. His job was to kneecap Bernie Sanders. That's it.
And the thing is, actually, what was really interesting, we talked about Iowa being rigged, but he won the Iowa Electoral College, which is very fascinating, which is Bernie Sanders got more votes in Iowa, but in Iowa, they would... If you won rural caucuses, those counted for more state delegate equivalents than if you won caucuses in college towns and urban areas. So basically, they made votes of young people and people of color worth less in the Iowa caucus. That's why Pete was able to win Iowa. This is real. If you go and look into it, you're going to find this is actually insane. And he only won by I want to say 2 or 3 state delegate equivalents. Bernie Sanders got significantly more votes, but he ended up, quote, winning Iowa.
But here's the thing. And
Isn't that insane?
No, I've personally spoken on numerous occasions to Pete D'Alessandro, who was Bernie's state director for Iowa in 2016. And I can assure you,
they definitely stole that one. Yeah.
The corruption in Iowa politics is absolutely insane because it is up until recently, because you know how the Democrats just like to rig the game as they go along. But they decided that because this is the first state in the nation, that they put their hooks into everybody. Just like Wasserman Schultz puts her hooks into everybody in South Florida, it's the same thing. There is a level of systemic corruption that I don't think people can fully wrap their heads around. There is a level of systemic corruption that went down in 2016 in California during the primary, when it became obvious that Bernie was going to win the state back then, and they had to do what they had to do for business. That's it. It's that simple. And so before you go, Mike, I do want to ask, since you are in California, we have had Butch Ware on the podcast, and we know the Green Party obviously has the negative stigma that is attached to it for obvious reasons. But considering California politics in the state that they're in right now, and considering that you are a jungle primary state, do you think it is possible, since I don't see any true left candidate running for governor in the state? We'll see what Khanna decides to do. But at the end of the day, I do think that Butch has real political chops. And I'd be curious to know if you think if he's able to get maybe a few $1 million behind him, he could be a force in the state. Jen thinks so. I think so. What are your thoughts on that?
Whenever somebody talks to me about third party stuff, my thing with it is it's only ever been successful in American history when you have people who already have power who are willing to basically jettison the old party, right? And whether you're talking about the Bull Moose Party, whether you're talking about when the Whigs died and eventually the Republicans grew out of the Whigs, it's about it needs to be more than one person, and it needs to be prominent, nationally known, successful people who are saying this party is just dead. It's not addressing the problems of the day. That's what happened with the Whigs, right? They didn't have a position on slavery, right? Yeah, the Democrats were pro-slavery and the Whigs were neutral on slavery, and the entire North was extremely anti-slavery. And so people were like, the Whig party needs to be anti-slavery. It needs to be the abolitionist party, and they wouldn't do it. And so it fell under its own contradictions, right? And eventually the Republican Party grew out of that, and so my feeling about third parties is it's a tactical decision for individuals to make in individual districts. And I can't tell you whether it's going to work or not, based because we haven't seen that national exodus from the Democrats. I'm trying to create that conditions of a dirty break. I want to create the conditions where people who already hold office are just dumping the Democratic Party. And I think you're starting to see us get closer and closer. Like if you look at Nebraska, right, where they ran as an independent, right, and he massively outperformed Kamala Harris, right? He didn't quite win, but if you had independents running in red states with that kind of level of performance, you would have seen a lot more people winning.
That's what we always say is the idea is to run as a populist, as an independent in red places.
I think Osborne proved that is viable, right?
Yeah.
The problem is it's always about money, in America. And the way that Citizens United has basically created this unlimited money, corporate and foreign, Israeli lobby money, and brought it into our system. That's the problem. Anytime you try to, if you're talking about a specific person, the Green Party for me has always felt like it's not serious. It hasn't turned the corner of seriousness, you know. And so I don't want to lend my voice necessarily to things that I feel like are quixotic. I want to I don't necessarily have to win all the time, but I want to have a plausible win. I want to be able to say like I could see us winning, and so as long as there's plausibility, I'm 100% behind it. As long as you can show me that you have a path and you have a logic and you have.
Well, I think if he can raise money, given your system there, I actually do think that that's one state where you could see a Green winning a statewide race. And I think
would be crazy.
Possible.
Which would be awesome, and I'd be in favor of that. And I just we've talked about this, but the Democratic Party now is almost so contradictory, and so in a kind of state of collapse.
Yeah.
And I think the 2024 election, they have a quadfecta now. The Republicans never have not had something like that since the 20s. We're in unprecedented times.
Yeah.
And the best thing that could happen to Butch that we've talked about is Kamala Harris runs for governor because she'll quit. But no, what I mean by that is from a strategy.
Let her debate him. Let her debate him.
Well, it's not even a question of debate. If Kamala does run, and I got to tell you, Mike, I think she's going to do it because I don't think she wants to get out of politics. I think she tried her little coup that didn't work to get Sotomayor off the Supreme Court and have her replaced there.
She's 60, though. We want a 40-year-old. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like if you're going to be smart, if you want to play the game, you want to put people on.
She can't win there either.
No,
she's done. She's going to be a
definitely, yeah.
But
she's got no
juice. But she still has that San Francisco money, and so it is entirely possible that if she does run for governor, she's going to clear the field, and that's going to open up an opportunity for somebody like Butch to run because. The populist energy, the progressive energy, the working class, even the conservative energy will want no part of her, and something is going to pop up to challenge her. And I could see it being somebody like Butch, even if it's a Green.
Yeah. I'm not. I don't think that it's impossible that you can see some sort of third party strategy work. And I would love to see it. I would love to see some sort of left-wing politics arising in this country because very few people are actually ideologically liberal. Like when I say ideologically liberal, I mean like neoliberal, like Hillary Clinton. Like people don't think tax credits are the only way to do things. They want to see a society where things are actually provided and you can measure outcomes and you can say like, hey, I can point to that thing and it was delivered for me. That's why people loved FDR. That's why the people had fucking, paintings of FDR in their house into the 80s, because they could say, for example, in Western Pennsylvania, they literally built towns for people and gave them homes and created, they called it like, socialism on the prairie, where they were literally, people could point to where their life was and then FDR happened and then where their life was. And they could directly connect it and say, he made me a successful person. He gave me that lifeline. That's the type of politics I want to create where people can actually say, this is how my life was improved by these people. This is how our society got better. This was what it was like before, and this is what it was like after. And if you could successfully create a politics like that, I think that the sky's the limit.
Great way to close the conversation. Guys, the links are in the description. Mike, thank you for all that you do on the left coast, as we're trying to make it. And
well, I'm more of a cosmopolitan. You know, I grew up as a Air Force brat, moving every 3 years. You know, so I've been all over the place in the course of my life.
Well, stay safe over there. Lord knows all of you guys have to. Who knows if they're even going to contain these wildfires anyway? But let's definitely, if and when possible, hopefully we can, join you on your show at some point. And yeah, this has been great, and I think we're definitely on the same wavelength. It's about transforming politics into service. Everything comes through labor, and if that has to come outside of the electoral process, then so be it. But we're in this fight, and we're obviously very happy.
All of the above. All right, I'll see you guys soon. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Mike.
Bye-bye. Yep. Bye-bye.
That was fun, and I think it's always good to have, look, he's got a huge audience. He's got
I know nothing about really the Twitch sphere other than Vosh. Vosh I know is
Amy C3, she's on. And Mikey has a very big following through the Humanist Report on Twitch.
Really? On Twitch?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Colin, I don't know if there's anything we can really do in terms of improving our reach on Twitch. I know we had some connection issues in the past.
I don't know what it was. We were streaming there and we weren't getting anything.
But guys, for those of you that are here, we are so incredibly grateful. We see a lot of people in the audience. We're already over. Listen, we're almost at 19,100 subscribers now. We are closing in on 20,000, which is kind of amazing.
That's so amazing. I've seen so many shows that I watch. Of course, they're non-political shows that'll come and hit their 100,000 subs within months. And we've been here for over 4 years, just trudging along in our little shadow ban universe.
Yep. But make sure that if you are so inclined, make sure to smash that like button. Make sure you are subscribed. Make sure that you click the bell. Make sure you go to patreon.com/generational change for as little as $5 a month. You could become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. We usually go up right after Jordan Chariton of the Status Quo News. We are all about transforming politics into service.
On Thursdays, anyway.
And we also do a Monday night show at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We are obviously very happy. And thank you, Maddie. You look like a new person as well. Did. Thank you, Dub Coast. We really appreciate it. Colinello, who's been with us pretty much. I
love that. We are small but mighty.
We are the little show that could. And thank you, Curdy. We really appreciate it. We really appreciate it as well, Repairman Jack. Yeah, we would obviously love to go on Mike's show at some point. Look, he's got almost 90,000 subscribers on Twitch, which is a lot because the Twitch audience, as you guys know, is a lot more active. They're a lot more involved. And so if you are so inclined, obviously Patreon is the preference because, as you know, not that we don't love our YouTube supporters, Patreon goes directly to Generational Change.
We like it all. So if you are new, definitely subscribe, hit the like button, make sure you check out some of our stuff in our library. We really have a lot of stuff. We've got a lot of content over the past 4 years, and we always have some interesting people on here. We have some other stuff to talk about tonight. So you might want to stick around.
And there you go. And Donald James, one of our great supporters, is over there. And so before we continue,
there you go.
We obviously want to highlight the progressive lefty, John.
Thank you.
Listen, John Stewart did I don't think John Stewart knew necessarily that the guy from Ukraine that he was putting that medal on was part of the brigade that I forget the name of, the Azov battalion. But maybe he should have known. It is what it is. Again, from the progressive lefty, $5. Thank you so much. Kyle is a fake progressive who sheep herds people into the Democrat.
I know. Yeah. That's why I stopped watching. I mean, I get it. I was disappointed in that. But you know what? Everything is sort of phases. Everything comes and goes. Everything has its time and everything jumps the shark. And, when I first started really following YouTube and Kyle Secular Talk was one of the first things that I really was following, him and Jimmy Dore and all these people. But, we kind of grow and adapt and change over time. And sometimes we kind of just go in a different direction.
True. And finally, from the Progressive Lefty, $5 again. Thank you so much. Both impeachments were bullshit, as well as the lawfare against Trump helped him get reelected.
Absolutely. They should have gone after him for the emoluments clause from the very beginning. And then
And why would you not go after somebody for the emoluments clause?
Because then everybody would be guilty of that. But they don't even want to stop their insider trading for 5 seconds. So why would they care about the emoluments clause?
Tony,
if they don't care about insider trading, they're not going to care about that.
Tony, thank you so much. It's obviously great to have you here. It's been a year. Thank you for obviously tuning in for Status Coup and for being here as well. Guys, our channel, if you're sticking around, and we've had over 250 live viewers this evening. Hit
the like button. I'm going to sound like Jordan. Hit that like button.
Yeah, no, we're still at almost 200, which is great. That's pretty big for our channel. And so we know that some of you are here because of Status Coup. Some of you are here because of Mike. And some of you are here because you actually like our channel.
And you're just sticking around. Or you fell and you can't change the channel and you can't get up. And in any event, we're glad you're here.
So one of the things that we have talked about at great length on this channel, which is not going to change, is the fact that we are unapologetically free Palestine. We do not deviate from this issue in any way, shape, or form. Jen has an origin story of origin stories. Before we play,
you make me sound like an X-Man.
Well, you kind of are. You know, like you say that Ilhan Omar is like this little ninja princess that
she is.
You know, considering all the shit that she has
like a Jedi ninja princess. I know.
So we are going to play this clip of former NBA superstar Dwight Howard, and Jen is going to share her origin story of what it was like growing up as a real Zionist in South Florida. Here we go.
NBA, it's a lot of things that you want to say, that you could say, but you know if you say it, there's gonna be repercussions. You could get in a lot of trouble. For example, a couple years ago when I played for the Houston Rockets, I tweeted "Free Palestine," and I dang near got kicked out the league for it. And I'm like trying to figure out why. You know what I'm saying? I didn't obviously before that the conversation happened with some Palestinians, and they were telling me. I actually went to the movies one day. I was in the movies in Houston. A whole bunch of Palestinians was like, "Hey man, we're big fans of you. Can we watch movies with y'all?" So I'm like, "Cool, man." You know, when I was in Houston and Orlando and a lot of cities I played in, I would take fans to movies. I would take them to main event, do big events at David Buster's and stuff like that. So we go to the movies. After the movies, I'm taking pictures with all the fans and stuff like that. And they asked me to just bring some awareness to what's going on in their country. So, me having a big heart, I'm like,
the Christian thing to do.
Yes, I'm like, you know what? I want people to know the struggles y'all having. I don't think it's wrong. So I tweet "Free Palestine." Less than 10 minutes after I tweet that, I get a call from the commissioner of the NBA.
Stop it.
Agents, people like working with my foundation at the time, Texas, you got to erase this tweet. You got to take this down. You're going to get it. I'm like, what did I do that was so bad?
Can somebody explain to me?
Yeah, can somebody explain? And it was just like because I went against the grain. I said something that people didn't like. And now.
Not people didn't like, they didn't like.
So now it's like I got to stand on what I believe and how I feel and not go back on it.
Yeah.
And when you're in the league, you be in that place where if I say too much, or if I say something, I may not get a job no more.
That's that 70% of people that's out the league that got you.
I gotta hold my tongue, and that's so hard to do when you are faced with so many situations. You have things going on that may be outside the court. You might have situations with your teammates or the team going on, and you can't really speak on. And then I just got to a place where I couldn't trust nothing or nobody. So it's like I'm not gonna say nothing, do nothing. And then that was a problem too, because now other people are speaking for me.
You can't win. You just can't win.
Here's what's amazing. I was wrong. I forgot how long it's been since Dwight Howard actually played for the Houston Rockets. So this goes all the way back. Dwight Howard became a Houston Rocket in 2012, and he left the team in 2016. So he was there for 4 years. And over the course of that 4-year period, which is almost a decade ago, he said "Free Palestine." And they
And
said,
within 10 minutes.
and they said, you're out of the league. Now, granted, at the time, the commissioner was David Stern, but nevertheless,
It wouldn't matter.
wouldn't matter. Adam
No,
Silver
it has
would
to
the
do with
exact same thing.
sponsors.
That's it, because the NBA is really a star sponsor driven league of the highest order. Jen, if you can share, because obviously we have a lot of new members of this audience.
You think people want to hear my origin story? I don't know why you call it my origin. It's not like I wasn't like
there's a reason
from this story.
There's a reason why I think a lot of people in the audience don't understand the power of the Israel lobby and why they have this hold over our economic and political system. And that when a basketball player simply says free Palestine, who has a guaranteed contract of tens of millions of dollars, at the drop of a hat, the commissioner, David Stern or Adam Silver, could step in and say, you will take this post down or we will kick you out of the league.
Right.
Like, that's it. Just for saying free Palestine.
And you think my little story is so fascinating. So for people who are new, I grew up in North Miami Beach in South Florida in a very Jewish area. I grew up in an area where the majority of people I went to school with were Jewish. We would go to the Jewish Community Center in the afternoons. I went to Sunday school. I went to Jewish sleepaway camp for a few years, like just everything. I went to a program sponsored by the JNF called Alexander Maz High School in Israel when I was 16 years old. And sort of like a birthright, it's a longer program. And it's nonstop brainwashing. And it's, when you're in it, obviously you don't see it as easily, especially not at that age. I don't know that I would have seen it then. But yeah, I grew up in a world where there was no such thing as Palestinians. Palestine wasn't a real place. That there was nobody there until the Jews made the desert bloom. And then those people who they're not Palestinians, they're Arabs, and they're all Arabs. And Arabs are absolutely less civilized, they're just such savages, and they're dirty, and they want to kill us. And watch somebody clip that now and put that out there like I was saying that for real.
Hey, our channel's growing. They're going to try to knock us down.
That's the kind of thing. But that's the message that we were taught. And it was just commonplace. It wasn't like my parents in particular, anybody was, this was just common. And anything involving the synagogue or anything involving Jewish holidays or Jewish after school or any of these programs, there was a very big focus on Israel. Always a big focus on Israel. I mean, we would sing Hatikva. I mean, it was all very, and so it was definitely a hard transition for me to kind of come out of that, like the deprogramming. And it started early in the 2000s. It was a gradual process. And really up until 2019, I was still holding out hope for this two-state solution. And now I really know that that was never real. That was never a real plan. There was never any intent ever the Zionists never intended to give the Palestinians a state. Never. So the whole concept of a two-state solution was just propaganda. So when I hear Democrats now, or people like party establishment people, or anybody really using that phrase, then I know that they're just full shit. Because there's no such thing as a two-state solution. That never was real. There's no plan for it. It never existed. And they have no interest in Palestinians having self-determination. So I come from a very unique perspective on this. I come from a background where a lot of the people that were previously in my life are no longer in my life, since I've been very vocal about this. And to be clear, on this channel, we started a series called Deconstructing Zionism in October of 22. So we've been talking about this for a long time. It's one of many reasons why I believe we get shadow banned. But so I have a very interesting, unique perspective on Israel. And now I'm definitely an anti-Zionist, but I'm anti a lot of things.
But it doesn't
I'm anti-empire, I'm anti-capitalist, I'm anti a lot of things. But Zionism is white supremacy. Zionism is the same as Nazism. It's the same thing. That's why I use the term Zion-Nazi. It's really the same. The fact that they don't see it, and really at the end of the day, Israel will be a footnote to the Nazi Holocaust. It'll be like, and then after being genocided, then the oppressed people turned around and became the oppressors, and then they committed this genocide. It'll be sort of like, it'll be the sequel, if you will. It'll be like the Kill Bill 2 to that. And it's pathetic. And in a lot of ways, it's embarrassing. And I have a lot of people in my life that are no longer talking to me, and it's just the way it is.
Well, you're a better person for it. And it is unfortunate that, look, Dwight clearly kept this in for a very long time. He clearly didn't talk about it because this happened like a decade ago. But clearly he's been looking around at what's been going on, and he just said, yeah, you know what? People have the right to know. There's probably a lot of guys in the NBA, there's probably a lot of guys in professional sports that want to speak up, that want to say the truth about what's really going on.
In every field, there's people that want to speak up and say the truth, but they can't because of their livelihood. Look what has been happening. People are losing jobs. Professors are getting fired. Like, this is real. It's a red scare. And it's people are really having economic and livelihood consequences. So I understand that. It's when people who wouldn't, or who could afford it, who have a nice cushion and they still can't stick their neck out, that's when it's disgusting. When it's people that they can't. I mean, I don't expect people to not be able to support themselves. No. That's not reasonable. That's just punching sideways. I don't have any interest in that. But, I did see something in the chat, and we had talked about the whole, who, of course, jumped on the bandwagon with the Republicans to support censuring or whatever the ICC. What was how many Democrats were on that little bandwagon?
45 Democrats crossed over with the GOP to vote to protect Israel from the International Criminal Court.
Because Israel's the victim, and the International Criminal Court is the boogeyman. Because Israel's a victim. And this is also something, as a Jewish person, that I have come to find despicable and disgusting. The victim card. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. Jews are not victims. Jews are survivors. And the idea that you want to still play the victim card is just pathetic to me. It's just so pathetic.
They've backed themselves into a corner that they're never going to get out from. It's just a question of when the walls close in completely. But that's kind of what we're staring at right now. Unfortunately, there are going to be a lot of people that are going to suffer mightily as a result. And this is what it really comes down to. The Israel lobby figured out a way, and this has been going on for decades, guys. It didn't just happen yesterday.
I bet we could figure out those 45 in alphabetical order, not too complicated.
Well, you have 5 Democrats from the state of Florida. Not that there's too many Democrats left.
I would think maybe with the exception of Maxwell, all of the Democrats from Florida would be on board. I
think you're right. I would have to check those numbers.
And I don't know, because maybe he did too. Because sometimes he sometimes goes both ways.
Yeah, I subject Jen enough to what should be her opponent that she buried. But Wasserman Schultz is unfortunately still in Congress, and I addressed this on Status Quo. We'll clip it later. But Debbie Wasserman Schultz is not only one of the 45 Democrats, which comes as no surprise. She's right at the top of the list.
I wouldn't even have to look. Like, no. It's her, it's Gottheimer, it's that whole, I'm sure it's Moskowitz.
But the other thing, which of course gets back to the whole Jew stereotype about, being money grubbing, Wasserman Schultz, for the second time in 3 years, was the top insider trader in the Democratic Party.
Cheers to my representative, Debbie. You are number one yet again. Kudos.
And to any of my friends that are particularly in labor, particularly ones that actually have power, that have been seeing this information and saying, man, I hope you're wrong about this. I'm never wrong about this.
We're never wrong about this.
Nope.
Because we've double checked and cross checked and dotted I's and crossed T's. So like when it comes to this, it's solid stuff.
I know it's difficult, but I would tell you, find that intestinal fortitude Jordan keeps asking when I'm going to run against Debbie. It's like, well, I've already moved up to the Panhandle, so that's not happening anytime
And
soon.
it's just not worth it. Honestly, it's not worth it down here.
David, I did not say that. I said that.
He did not. I was watching. He did not say
I said that I won't rule it out, but for the foreseeable future,
he doesn't even live here anymore.
Yeah, listen, I've lived there long enough where I could always move back. That's not a problem.
It'll be underwater. There's no point. I honestly think we should designate South Florida Little Tel Aviv. Just give it to all the Israelis that won't stop coming here, and let's the rest of us evacuate to higher ground.
I don't have a problem with that. I actually think that that's probably the best option, because let me assure you,
let them be holding the condos on the beach bag when nobody else wants to buy it.
Well, the one thing that is going to end up happening, no questions asked, one thing that is going to happen when it becomes obvious that the position of Israel is no longer obtainable, you will see a mass migration.
It'll be long before that. It's going to be at the point. You're already seeing it because they have major economic security issues. Their economic problems are massive.
But nobody says anything about them coming into the country.
I do.
Nobody. Well, I know you do.
Go and look back. Well, I will refer to that as the infestation that it is. These are people that are predominantly genocidal. So statistically speaking, the people that are coming here from Israel support genocide.
Luke, you're going to have to
want genocidal immigrants.
Luke, you're going to have to explain what that means. And we are, and listen, if our channel,
I'm sure it has something to do with cutting Florida off from the rest of the country and just putting the people here that
like the meme from Bugs Bunny.
And I'm not opposed to it. We can discuss that, but I really think we should start with everything south of Lake Okeechobee, because that's what's going to be underwater. But at this point,
Sky,
do you mean psychologically or politically? We'd have to talk later.
Sky, thank you for coming. I think you are new to our channel. Let's just say that Tim Canova, he's actually a Zionist.
Yeah.
He's actually somebody.
There is that.
I can remember back in 2016 when he was running for Congress.
Peter and I both were volunteers for Tim's campaign in 2016. That's where we met.
And he was sending out mailers, basically listen, Debbie Wasserman Schultz never does anything that isn't in line completely with the Democratic hierarchy of the establishment. And so when it was decided, maybe one of the only decent things that Obama did as president was the Iran nuclear deal. Canova was putting out mailers saying that Wasserman Schultz was wrong
for signing the deal. He was in the camp that was attacking her for supporting the deal. In fact, that's the only decent thing I think she's ever voted on.
Yeah.
And he was going after her for that. Yeah.
Which goes to show you just how fucked up politics is in general. Yeah. But that is ostensibly what
basically, and this is what I would say about Tim, is when he lost, he really it was always all about him. It was never about the greater mission. He took it personal. He got very bitter and very vindictive, and he basically took his toys and went home. Now, and that's basically that. And I'm saying that in the nicest way possible.
Now, listen, Jen got just under 30% of the vote when she ran in 2020. I don't know how much of a difference it would have made, but I will tell you that especially when it came to fundraising, grassroots efforts, and support behind the scenes, Canova went to town smearing Jen, saying that she is a phony and actually a wannabe establishment.
What's so annoying, guys, is that I did so much work for him when he ran, and was one of the people that was really, I thought we were friends, and I actually had approached him before we officially decided that we were going to do a campaign, and asked him that and made sure he wasn't planning on running again. And he wasn't. And then once we got in it, then he was so angry and bitter and spiteful. And he just started really being sabotaging of us. He went and told Jimmy Dore that I took Soros money and all this stuff. So Jimmy ghosted us the whole time, and that probably would have helped. There's a lot of different variables, but at the end of the day, he was in it for him, and it was always about him.
Correct.
And so when he got cheated, he was upset that he got cheated. And it just, when you think it's about you, you've already lost.
Oh, absolutely. If you're in politics,
you've lost.
If you're in politics for yourself and if you're in politics for money, stay as far away from those people as you possibly can. And so the other story that we have really been on, that we have been covering on the domestic side, that we are not going to let pass us by because it's as important as anything that's going on right now. And that, of course, is Luigi Mangione and the fact that we have a for-profit hell care system because, Jesus.
Let me explain something. First of all, Jesus loves me, but be very aware that it's real Jesus. It's not white Jesus.
Jesus.
I don't need no white Jesus. I'm just saying. Okay, as Nina Turner would say, it's black Jesus.
Oh, you mean like Earl of Pearl Monroe?
I just love when she gets completely flustered and she instead of just saying, "Oh Jesus," she's like, I gotta call for black Jesus. Like when it's like really, you can when just Jesus isn't enough, you need black Jesus.
Well, if there's somebody who really needs Jesus, it's Sean Diddley Combs. And apparently, Jen, I know this is...
I know so little about him and this whole thing, and I so don't do TMZ.
I know this is such a TMZ story, but it's impossible not to address it. So Sean Diddy Combs throwing tantrums over attention accused United Healthcare CEO killer Luigi Mangione receives behind bars on his shit list.
See, this concerns me. I mean, yes, it's ridiculous, but it concerns me. I'm already concerned for his safety. And what's ironic is that these are both cases that I don't think will ever see the light of day. I don't think either of these cases, and I've said it regarding Diddy before we even had this whole other, Luigi Mangione case, this case is never going to see the inside of a courtroom. Now, whether or not that means he's Epsteined or whatever, I don't know how it's going to resolve. I know it's not going to see the inside of a courtroom. And I feel the same way about Luigi Mangione. But instead of somebody like Diddy recognizing that they're in the same boat, this stupid motherfucker actually feels that he has some higher ground as the I guess, head criminal of that, establishment. Like, how dare somebody be treated better than me? And I think he's Icarus, man, because that case going to court hurts a lot more big name people than anything about Luigi Mangione. So he needs to be more concerned for his own safety.
Sean Diddy Combs is throwing tantrums about the attention fellow inmate Luigi Mangione has taken from him inside their notorious New York City lockup. And that may put the accused CEO killer on the disgraced rapper's shit list, his diddling list, a source told the Post Tuesday. Listen, if there's one thing that can't be denied, we used to always joke about how there's what do you call the Clinton list? What was that called?
I just say that, I would say people get Arkansided.
Arkansided. Okay.
But now I just say Epstein. I mean,
there are a ton of people that have been there was a ton of people that were in the orbit of the JFK assassination that mysteriously disappeared or died. There are several people in the Clinton sphere that mysteriously disappeared and died. And now, no surprise, there are a lot of people in the Diddy orbit that have mysteriously disappeared or have died under very mysterious circumstances. So as far as I'm concerned, this is probably something that was leaked to the press by somebody who's in that prison and is basically trying to get the word out there that Diddy may be in a situation where he's being passed information from the outside saying, you want to get out from under this weight that is hanging above your head? Get rid of Mangione.
No. I don't see that.
That's what I'm thinking.
No, the Occam's razor is that Diddy is a giant, thin-skinned, egotistical man baby, and doesn't like that somebody is getting attention. Now, whether or not this whole thing is true, I who the hell really knows? But I am concerned for Luigi's safety. And this guy is just, this is the problem: is that yes, people mysteriously disappear. that have been affiliated with different things. That's true. And that does make him dangerous. And that does make me concerned for Luigi. But here's the thing that Diddy, and this is sort of like my Icarus reference and what he doesn't understand, there's always a bigger bear. And the problem is with his case going to trial is those bigger bears aren't playing either. No. So, and you're talking about some very, very high-end people. And so that's just what this is the problem, is that there's a bigger bear and he's just so big in his own ego that he doesn't see it. He's more likely, I think, to be Epstein than Luigi, but we'll see. I mean, we could be doing like Vegas odds on which one of them, is first, but I don't see either of those cases going to trial.
You may be right about that. And what I will say is that whether or not it's true, because again, we are not inside that New York City prison. We don't know for sure what's going on. So I think it's highly plausible that Diddy is so egotistical behind bars that he doesn't like the fact that he has this guy who's being basically viewed as a folk hero and everyone is paying attention to him. Absolutely. Diddy has been in the spotlight for a generation.
But does he really? And here's the thing that shows real delusion, if that all is in fact true, is that he truly does not see the distinction between him being in there and Luigi Mangione being in there. Right? Oh, Vegas refused to take off. But I mean, that's the thing. Like, he really doesn't see the difference. So he is dealing with all sorts of disgusting things and violating and oppressing and enslaving people against their will and doing some horrible shit. And Luigi Mangione is a prime example of somebody punching up.
And this,
so again, even though it's a crime, it's punching up.
And this should come as no surprise. And this should come as no surprise, because we've seen GoFundMe do this a time or two. It goes to show you how broken this system really is.
Or they'll just charge them with RICO charges like they're doing in Georgia for the people that set up a bail fund for the Stop Cop City people that were arrested. There are people that made $10 and $5 donations to a bail fund that are being charged under state RICO charges in Georgia. That's the same kind of premise as what they would do with that.
Well, our resident attorney is definitely going to have.
I mean, I don't know what New York's RICO laws are. That's in Georgia. But like the concept of people that are supporting him and sending funds for him legally will somehow have a criminal liability. That's what I mean. That's the move.
A big shout out to Dub Coast.
Thank you, Dub Coast.
We've got a new YouTube member. Yes, it obviously helps our channel grow. I think it goes without saying, we like to see the humorous element on this. Now, I forget the name of this channel, but I see their shorts pop up constantly on YouTube. I know that
What are you showing something? What is
this guy's name? Is he's Mike Sheboygan, I think is his name.
Okay.
And he does these. Yeah, Dr. Sheboygan. Like
Sheboygan.
Yeah, exactly. Or Sheboygan, very big in Sheboygan, as Gus Polinski likes to say. But this is one of the best shorts I've seen about a day in the life of a pro health CEO. So this is good stuff.
Is a day in the life of a CEO. I wake up at 8 a.m. in my suit and immediately put on my bulletproof vest. After that, I sign my last will and testament, then say goodbye to my wife. If I ever died, I don't know what she would do without me. At 10 a.m., I go to the gym. My trainer has me on a new kind of workout. We've been getting some great results. At 1 p.m., I have a completely normal company-wide Zoom meeting. Hey guys, moving forward, I think we should just all work from home where it's safe. Also, what if everyone in the company was called CEO? Wouldn't that be really fun? Unfortunately, nobody found this fun. At 3 p.m., I go for a relaxing walk in the park. For some reason, I have this weird feeling that somebody's following me. At 4 p.m., I traded my stupid expensive sports car for something much more practical that I actually like. After that, I hire a body double. Yup. It's just like me. Damn, I'm hot. At 7 p.m., I send my body double to a shareholders meeting in bustling New York City. I hope he has a good time, and that's my day.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, and now they're going to have their own hotline and their own support group, apparently, for CEOs. We'll take up a collection for you.
Yes.
We're so concerned for your well-being.
we are actually much more concerned about Luigi Mangione than we are.
I am concerned for Luigi Mangione.
For-profit health CEOs.
And I sure as shit am not concerned for Sean Diddy Combs.
No.
I could not care less either way what happens in that. Like, I could not care less. I do think it would be entertaining to get that black book. But, you know, look, all sorts of things have been happening since that whole thing started even becoming public. We're talking, I think that led to the divorce of Bill and Melinda Gates. I think there's a lot of shit that has gone down that has to do with or that was Epstein, but like there are people tied to this. I'm thinking of Ashton Kutcher and Mila Kunis.
Oh man. Yeah. The type of shit that he's been involved in for years now.
Yeah, there's so many people that have a lot to lose. LeBron James.
Jen, what about the video? Well, forget LeBron James.
There's people that have a lot to lose. That's what I'm saying. And Diddy, it's all a matter of who's got more power. You know, it's almost at the top of the food chain. I don't know.
It's almost like LeBron is staying in the NBA as long as he has to in order to see that this case ultimately goes away, because he is still one of the preeminent cash cows of the NBA.
Exactly. And that's sort of like insurance. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I don't know who the food chain ends somewhere. And I know it's not Diddy.
Jen, what is the point of assassinating Luigi?
Why would who whack Luigi? Well, Diddy, because he's jealous, because he's insane. I don't know what his thing is. But the powers that be do not want a trial and testimony and going into the issues about the health insurance industry and about United's records. And they do not want that. They don't want this case even being in the public eye at all. The amount of public attention it will get is just, they don't want this out there. So they don't want him. They don't want anything about this being testified about in a courtroom. That's why.
So the final story we're going to cover tonight, which is, of course, the most important story of all, you know, Trump's plans to buy Greenland. Oh, wait, I'm just kidding.
I heard about that. Wait. I didn't know it was for sale. Did everybody know it was for sale?
It's not for sale. They're saying it's not for sale.
Didn't Denmark come out and basically say Greenland's
not for sale?
It's Danish, yes?
It's totally for sale. We're going to buy it.
Trump, in his world, everything is for sale. And the truth is, everything kind of is for sale.
Yeah, it is.
But it is. But so did Denmark say that? It's Denmark, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for sale. Remember, the only reason anybody would want Greenland like we would want Greenland is strictly to drill, baby, drill. That's all it is. It's all about what's under their soil.
Well, we're not getting Greenland. I was shocked when I first years ago found out that Greenland's part of North America. I was fascinated by that.
See, Peace Dove knows what I'm talking about. I am still convinced that the only reason why a story like that's getting floated is because of this idea of, Diddy, you want those charges to go away? You need to get rid of Luigi.
So in other words, they get to pin whatever that if Luigi gets Epstein, then they'll pin it on Diddy. But it doesn't really matter because Diddy's a fool for falling for that because they're going to get rid of him too.
And I agree.
It's way worse for people going public.
We definitely have a new resident follower of our channel who I hope
know, and I like you, Sky Soul Poet. And you know what, though? We're already going to see copycats.
I think you're
quite
probably
honestly, and quite honestly.
Well, just look at their reaction. Look at their reaction. Isn't, well, you know, this is really crazy. And listen, this is why I don't want to subject Jen to more than 2.5 hours of podcasting because I've already done this for 4.5 hours.
Aren't you a martyr?
Yeah, really.
I wasn't invited to your status coup party.
So on the Status Coup channel, I got into the details on a few different stories, but there is no question that when you think about the lowest of the low, and we'll clip it for our channel.
Who are we talking? Who is? Because there's so many
Catholic Archdiocese in a lot of different parts of this country. They are heavy investors in United Health.
Why does this? But you know what? Who, honestly, when you're that big of a company and you're spread out,
remove tax exemption. you want to really have a separation of church and state in this country? Remove tax exemption status from religious institutions.
Oh, that's a separate issue. But when you talk about that they're invested in United, a lot of people are invested in United. When you're that big, that's why you're that big, is there's that many shareholders. So saying is that they're invested in United. Now, talking about their tax exempt status is a whole other thing. I don't believe that religious institutions should get tax exempt status.
I agree. How do you think we ended up with the Church of Scientology? That's the reason. We ended up with the Church of Scientology because Hubbard.
Do you think that's the only? Oh my God! Do you have any idea how many churches are registered as 501c3s?
Of course, but there's nothing in the modern era. Remember, there's still a lot of people alive today who were alive when the Church of Scientology was formed, and there is no question that it was
like the people that are alive today that were there when Israel was magically created out of thin air.
That's anti-Semitic, Jen. No, we have one more story to cover this evening, and it is about a couple of Jew billionaires. And you know what they decided to do in the state of California?
You can't talk like that. You're going to get you can't say it like that.
I don't give a fuck. I don't care. And I say it because they call it a conspiracy or anti-Semitism. Call whatever the fuck you want, but there are way too many of them out there that all fall under these very similar patterns. So for those of you who may not be up to snuff on what's going on in California, everyone's paying attention to the wildfires and the contribution of climate change to the spread of wildfires because of the heat. Keep in mind, this isn't July. This is not the winter in the Southern Hemisphere.
And we want people to be focusing on climate change. Don't get me wrong.
Exactly. It is without question. Climate change plays a role in the heating of our planet. This is not July in Southern California. This is January, and this shit's happening right now. You've got 100-mile-an-hour winds. You've got very hot air, and everything is spreading. But the major controversy surrounding this is, on the one part, people are talking about Mayor Bass cutting $18 million out of the fire department budget. Now, why is that significant, even though it's a pretty large budget? Because the part of the budget that they cut had to do with the water supply. And why is the water supply such a significant issue in California? This is why.
The Resnicks were building their empire. The state of California was building new water infrastructure with taxpayer money. California's natural water supply is very inconsistent. Vastly differing amounts of rainfall means the state can go from surplus to drought and back very easily. So they build water banks to store water during surpluses to have during droughts. One important storage facility is the Curran Water Bank, started in 1988. The facility was built with hundreds of millions of taxpayer dollars, which could have been a good thing. The people of California would have owned the water. But there were two Californians thirstier than the rest, and they wanted more water. Linda and Stuart Resnick. And they had a lot of political power. We'll get to that. In 1994, state water officials, water infrastructure contractors, and agricultural landowners with water rights arranged a secretive meeting at a resort in Monterey Bay, California. These groups, a mix of private companies and public agencies, rewrote California's water rules without any input from voters, taxpayers, or legislators. The new rules, called the Monterey Plus Agreement or the Monterey Amendments, were devastating for working Californians, and great for agriculture billionaires. The original code included urban preference, a long-standing rule that in times of drought, the state water board would give urban areas, where people live, access to water supplies before agricultural interests. Monterey axed that.
There it is.
Yeah.
There it is. And why would that be, Jen?
Well, I mean, obviously the agricultural interests are big corporate donors, but this is, so I told you, for people who aren't aware, there was this really good series called Goliath with Billy Bob Thornton. And one of the seasons, the episode was literally about this. Literally, it was this, they gave them different names, but it was the exact same thing. And it's incredibly scary. So there are towns in parts of California that just don't have water anymore.
Nope.
There's just no
Especially
water.
along the Central Valley.
Bringing in bottled water. They have no water.
That's the Central Valley.
Their water has been completely diverted, and it's been diverted largely for like agriculture, almonds. In Goliath, it was this almond company, and it was Amy Brenneman and Dennis Quaid. They were great, but played the couple.
And you know, it's always amazing because we've heard for so many years that Fresno is such a shithole and it's dangerous and it's all mostly illegal immigrants and all this stuff. Do you not understand how this works. The reason why Fresno is such a poor, dilapidated part of the state is because all of the resources that should be plentiful for the people who live there are being sucked up by, well, in this case, pretty much the Resnicks, kind of alone. And this gets back to one of the big problems we've had and why our food is so expensive in this country. You know, you go to the supermarket and you wonder why things are so expensive. Well, we used to live in a country where things were seasonal, where you could only get certain types of fruits and vegetables and legumes at certain times of the year because that's when they were properly grown. People like the Resnicks decided, oh no, we're going to grow it at all times of the year and we're going to control all of it. And that's what they did. We'll continue.
That means that in times of drought, the water systems for normal Californians would have to buy water from private companies because they weren't getting it from the state. The new agreement also loosened regulations on paper water. That's water that doesn't necessarily exist anywhere but on paper. The full quantities of water that providers could have, but don't actually need to have. Today, 5 times as much water has been promised and sold as actually exists. And importantly, the meeting changed ownership of the Kern Water Bank. What once belonged to the state was transferred to a few private water contractors, one of which was Westside Mutual, a wholly owned subsidiary of Wonderful Foods. The wonderful employee who runs Westside, Bill Phillimore, is the chairman of the public organization that manages the Kern Water Bank. Boom. One secret meeting and the Resnicks owned nearly 60% of an important California water resource, built with hundreds of millions of dollars in taxpayer money. The new ownership, combined with the rules on paper and surplus water, meant that during times of drought, the Resnicks could sell Kern water back to the state water systems. They took Californian taxpayers' water and sold it back to them, both literally as the water supply and also to grow expensive food like gourmet pistachios and pomegranate juice. They converted the people's water into products many can't afford. And that's just one water bank. The Resnicks also have control of other water boards and have been sued for directing more water towards their properties. So how do they get away with this Chinatown-level chicanery?
Gonna be a lot of irate citizens when they find out that they're paying for water that they're not gonna get.
With philanthropy. The Resnicks donate millions of dollars to politicians and research institutions, which help,
including the current mayor of Los Angeles, Karen Bass, and the new U.S. Senator, Adam Schiff.
them secure control over water systems, and even get more water and more taxpayer funding.
And there you have it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just, yeah. And once people, and people don't realize this, whether your water is contaminated like you live in Flint, whether your groundwater is poisoned like East Palestine, or whether your water just doesn't exist like in California, in all of these cases, it happens to people that are already disadvantaged and have no means to fight back, and they have nowhere to go. And it's not like you can sell your house. Who's buying a house that doesn't have water? Who's buying a house that has poisoned water? Nobody. This is why we need to live in a civilization where this is what our basically our general public resources and our public goods should be subsidizing those people to be able to relocate and be somewhere where they have what they need. That's what we need to be doing. I don't like this water thing is in so many places. It's just in a different capacity.
Could you imagine, Karen Bass there is probably a reasonably high likelihood that she is going to get recalled as mayor. And even though she is certainly guilty and deserves whatever she's got coming to her politically, especially, we must address the core issues of our time. Karen Bass is merely a symptom of our broken system. Our broken system is perpetrated by people like the Resnicks. They are the people who are, I can't even, the magnitude of what they did, the magnitude of the privatization of the water supply, the magnitude of not having access to water to put out an apocalyptic wildfire. Think about how much the wildfire spread as a result of not having the water when it was needed immediately. And think about how much containment could have been done if they had what they needed. Now all of the Los Angeles area is under threat of annihilation. Are the Resnicks going to get charged with crimes against humanity for doing this?
Probably. And if they do, here's the thing. It'll be like the Sacklers, right? They'll buy themselves out of criminal liability, even if there was any, right? Which I don't think that they would find there's a lot of causal links that you would have to link to directly relate them to this. But people like that just buy their way out of criminal liability anyway. I'm thinking of people like, those are the people that I kind of want to put in the prisons, and then we can have for-profit prisons, and we have people like the Sacklers and these guys in there, and we release all the and let's not even get started on the prisoner firefighters that who knows how many of them are being held incarcerated past when they should have been released to be able to keep them there for this labor reason. And it's slavery, and California's big on that. California's big on, prison slaves.
Yeah, I agree. And I couldn't have said this better, Henry. So do I. And the distinction must be made.
I am not a self-loathing Jew. I am proud of my heritage and my background. And we've talked about it quite a bit.
The problem with
and
the
that's why you
Zionists,
shouldn't just say Jews, because people don't really
yes, and I
know
understand
our
that.
background. Yeah.
I will rephrase. The Zionist Jewish billionaires that are the Resnicks. And you better believe that they're Zionists. There is a contingent within the culture, almost universally affluent, that believe that Israel is a benevolent nation that could do whatever the fuck they want. And that's got to stop.
I also want to be very clear that people like the Resnicks are perpetrating violence on the people of California. So if and when something violent was to happen to them, I would suggest that it would be self-defense or defense of others by the person committing said violence, because denying people water is denying people healthcare. It's violence.
As far as I'm concerned, this is the class action lawsuit to end all class action lawsuits. You all in California should be figuring out a way right now to go after the Resnicks. That's what you should be doing, because they got a lot of money, and a lot of that money they shouldn't have. So get your money back. They made their money off of the backs of other people.
Who hasn't? Which oligarchs have not made their money off the backs of other people?
Well, there is no question.
Exactly.
There is an exception. And you know what, Dub Coast? You're right. Steve Gutenberg is an example of somebody who did the right thing. And James Woods is an example of somebody who was a pussy and decided to run, because he's not as tough as he pretends that he is.
Clearly.
And he's also somebody who, unlike Steve Gutenberg, called for the mass slaughter of the Palestinian people. He said it openly. He said it consistently. And now he's without his precious home up in the hills of Southern California.
I'll take up a collection.
Seriously. Thank you, Chip. I am wondering how much backlash will result because of Zionist genocide and other problems like the Resnicks. It's only going to get worse because they're not backing away. They think that it's like with LeBron James, it's with the rest, it's with everybody. They are all convinced, because they live in the 0.01% of society, that this is all going to blow over. And if it doesn't blow over, we'll just buy our way out of it.
Well, that tends to work. And not to mention the fact that we have extremely short memories, and we have very little attention span. So in another week, there's different news. So that's I can tell you, as someone who studied like media and PR, that's like your number one fallback, is that by the end of like everything becomes we would say birdcage liner at the end of the week, right? Because there's always going to be something else out there. And so they just have to delay things until there's something more interesting. And then they just wag the dog, and there you go.
As we have said before, and we'll say again, we are a small but mighty channel. If you are so inclined to support our efforts, please make sure that you are subscribed. Please make sure to not only hit the like button, but click the bell so that you are reminded of when we go live, although usually it is going to be on Mondays at 9, Thursdays at 7, and I will do my occasional pontificating with Pete. And of course, we will split some time on Status Coup and continue to hopefully grow our channel out. We are obviously very appreciative if you guys are willing to contribute. Make sure to go over to patreon.com/generational change. For as little as $5 a month, you can become a supporter of our small but mighty channel. Now, the big shout out tonight to Dub Coast, who became a YouTube member, and also a big shout out once again to our friend Tony D, who has been here with us for a year. So
that's awesome. Do you have anything coming up? Do we have anything coming up?
Got a text message earlier today from Wendell Potter. So we are hoping that we can get him on, the former for-profit health CEO, to come on and talk about his experience.
That could have been him. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's the cautionary tale. That could have been him.
Well, he got out, and he has been and that's why we love you, Chris. We appreciate you being here. But that's why Potter has been very adamant about basically saying this industry has to die. Like, it has to die. You cannot, in good faith and good conscience, look at what's going on and think that this can continue. It can't. It's not sustainable. And Mangione basically broke the straw of the camel's back. That's what he did.
Yeah.
You cannot and will not hear these egregious stories ever again regarding the for-profit health system and knowing what it means and what it represents.
Well, I mean, as soon as this happened, I said we should reach out to Wendell and see, but I'm sure he's been inundated. Like, we're not the only people that thought, oh, hey, Wendell Potter would be a great person to talk to about this.
No,
I always think I'm so original, but I'm not really.
Well, we're still trying to get Jamie Peck to come on the show as well. So I'll continue to work on that. We're going to have some good guests. Obviously, Mike from PA was a big one tonight. That's definitely going to make the rounds. We'll maybe even get shout outs from other people who may want to cross-pollinate. With that said, we're very grateful for each and every one of you that are here. Chip, David, Donald, Sable.
We
Chris,
know who our people are.
Yeah, no, we
know
lots
who our regular people are, for sure.
Sky, Kat Negrita, Henry Kajawa, P. Stuff, Carlos Madrid, Tomas, Luke
and
Shields.
Yes, Californians, stay safe out there.
Yes. Denise Columbia, Bruce Carter, for all of you guys that are out there in Cali. Shonda, gotta always say hi to Shonda. Willie Bragg,
Shonda!
Tomas. Yeah, you guys have been great. And like I said, we're very happy to have you all here. So remember to you know what? Blakely is another anti-Zionist Jew who I believe was raised.
I don't know who, do I not know? Why do I not? I don't know who that is. Who is that? Is that a social media person?
Yeah.
Yeah, guys, I am out of the loop on a lot of the people, but I do have a whole new stack. Oh, Sable. I do have a whole new stack. And I say stack figuratively because a lot of them are audiobooks. You guys know. I'm pretty
sure she is, man. Oh
wait, no, we had her on.
No.
Yes.
Blakely?
Isn't that girl we had on?
Are you thinking of Catherine? Are you thinking of Bogan?
No, we've had her on. She was the girl that did those. I'm a liberal. I'm a da-da-da-da.
No. That's Carissa, and she's not Jewish.
That's not. Okay, then never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, but Carissa was great.
I have a whole bunch of books that I'm about to get into that have very cool authors and people that we can, because I think that's where when I was going through so many more books and I would be forwarding you names left and right of people, and I haven't really been doing that. And so I will once again get back on my, because the last book that I did was Jordan's, and we've already had him on.
We'll leave you guys with this thought before we go. No ceasefire, no compromise, no forgiveness. Kill them all. Well, I guess it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy, as Jean-Luc Gohard would
say. This is one of those things, like, I'm not vengeful, but I am a big supporter in the natural and logical consequences of some of one's behavior, otherwise known as karma.
And there's certainly a lot of it to go around these days. So,
she goes after Michael Rappaport.
Yeah. And that
by the way, do you have plans on ever coming down here, like, in the near future?
Beginning of March.
Oh, okay.
Why?
I have tickets to the Improv to go see Josh Johnson at the Dania Improv. So I'm excited about that.
When is that?
It's the 18th, which is why I couldn't do this thing that somebody invited me. Yeah. But anyway, I'm very excited. I don't know. Do you know who Josh Johnson is?
I don't, but
he's
I
on the Daily Show. He's sometimes on he's like one of the correspondents on the Daily Show, but he's so friggin' funny. I love his stuff. So.
I can imagine. Well, I got to go see if my Irish are able to get to the national championship game.
That's not your team. You went to Rutgers. You don't get to be a team.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, for the goodness sake.
I got to rock one. I got to rock them all.
It's unbelievable. Had to figure.
Don't forget, we've got NFL playoffs this weekend.
Not for me.
No, but for some.
That's how it is. It's over for me. The season's over for me. I've moved on.
I'm
done. I'm done. I'm getting up. I'm getting dressed. I'm moving on.
You mean to tell me you don't want to see either?
I'm not staying, and we're not spooning, kind of thing, right? Like I'm done. I'm out of here.
You don't care if the Lions win or the Vikings win.
No. Once we get to the Super Bowl, like I'll be. Look, it's interesting, and I will always root for the underdog. I will always root for the team against the team that continues to win year after year for Kansas City. So like I will always root for the underdog, but I just generally am not that interested when it's not my team.
Well, I think the guy
I'm self-absorbed that way.
Well, I think it's time for somebody to win the Super Bowl that isn't sponsored by Pfizer, if you catch my drift.
Yes.
Smash that like button, share, subscribe, do all those things we ask you to do. We appreciate
you guys on Monday.
Monday it is. Have a good night.